right, we are live. Classical Bones. Anyway,
Hello.
what's up, everybody? Thanks for
It's very
joining.
energetic.
Good evening.
Announcement.
So I just wanted to open it up really quick. We're just doing a live stream, classical focused. We've been doing some classical stuff on the Jazz Bum stuff, so it just made sense to kind of spend some like dedicated time for people who are interested. So we have Felipe's here. We have also Michael, Poetry on Plastic, and then also Greg from Flowering Spikes, and we might have others drop by. But I just wanted to thank everybody, and hopefully this will be entertaining and interesting and educational. Yeah, so what do you guys jump into it, Felipe?
Mike, nice intro. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Flowering Spikes, Greg, for joining us tonight. I think it's awesome because we even have like a thread, right, on a Discord server about it. I think so. Taking the opportunity, whoever is not on Discord, please log in, sign up for Discord. It's a nice, really nice discussion over there. Thanks, audience, Peanut Gallery for joining. So the idea is to kick in something that could happen, sporadically every once in a while, and listen to the experts, listen to the lovers of classical music, myself included, someone that wants to learn about it, right? So welcome, guys. Thank you so much.
You picked the perfect shirt for this stream.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got the Lakers, and he's got Green Day.
I'm wearing Vans today.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And this guy's repping his merch.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Discord is great. The classical section is cool. I think
there's a lot of high effort posts in that Discord that I do not contribute to.
Yeah. But also it's like if you're like me or Michael and you listen to old classical recordings on vinyl, like how many people are you going to meet in real life that you can talk to any of this stuff about, Like basically nobody. So
there weren't even people online talking about it until a year or two ago.
That's very true. Like I think maybe, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago or something, when I first even started to look for anything classical on YouTube, like all I found was you,
Yeah. Like my videos weren't even that good. I was just showing classical records, and I think nobody really did that aside from Michael Fremer. Like Michael Fremer was like the only other person who would occasionally show like classical records on his YouTube channel. I just thought, well, but on the forums, like a lot of people were talking about some of this stuff, and there was a lot of information out there. It wasn't being like talked about in kind of the record collecting community that was like kind of populating on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. There was no one. Yeah, there was you. Wasn't there one? Well, I guess there's always been Dave Hurwitz, but he's not.
Yeah, but that's kind of different. I tried to.
It's almost like a reference. I feel like his channel is like a reference. Like whenever I want to look up something, I'll tune into him and he'll show like 12 CDs of like different versions of like a symphony or something. So like it's just interesting just to have somebody go through it quickly. He's a great resource.
Yeah, and he's really he's found a lot of success. It's very different than kind of the record collecting community. And I don't always find myself agreeing with him, and I don't particularly even like him that much, but I find myself watching him still.
Yeah, it's addicting in a strange way.
He's a likable guy. Come on.
Well, I mean, I tried to do a video with him like back when he was like not as big as he was now on YouTube, but when he was first starting, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like maybe we could like do a video talking about like kind of golden age orchestral recordings, and he kind of found out I was an audiophile, and he kind of wanted nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, I don't get he really is kind of like just focused on like he doesn't talk about. I mean, I guess he does measure the quality.
He does talk about sound quality, and so that's what I don't get. It's like you talk about sound quality, but you're not gonna engage in any audiophile anything, and it's like, well, but
I wonder what kind of system he has. Like I wonder if
I don't know.
He has a really good one, or if he's just like listening to it on like a Sony CD player or something.
I'm not sure. It's probably something better than that, I hope. It's probably a good pair of headphones would be my guess.
Yeah. Right.
But I do remember, and maybe he was listening to a different digital remastering, but I remember one time, like one of my favorite pieces is Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. I adore that symphony. And for the longest time, my go-to like vinyl record recording of that has been the Andre Previn on EMI, which if anyone doesn't own that, you should go buy it because it's amazing. And he said, yeah, that's great, but the Timirkanov also on EMI is not only a better. He said it was a better performance and it was better sounding. And I know performance is subjective, but I bought the original EMI of that because he mentioned it, and I listened to it. And I went, "This isn't better sounding."
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, right? It's like performance is always subjective to what you like, but then it's just records
to an extent.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, unless it's like, I don't know. I don't want to get into weird examples right now, but like, yeah. But
well, I can think of one.
What?
Like the famous audiophile recording of the Dallas Symphony of Rachmaninoff's Symphonic Dances, where it's not that good.
Yeah, it's not.
It sounds great, but it's not like you compare that to like the performances by Chicago Symphony or London Symphony, and it's like why would you want to listen to this version?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's like in the video that I just put out, I was doing Alvarado del Gracioso. And so then there is that famous one that Analog Productions put out in the very beginning, like the remaster one. And it's like 2 minutes slower than any other version. And it sounds like circus music and it's like insane. So it's like, but it sounds incredible. You know what I mean?
So if it's AP, does that mean it's it's Living Stereo RCA?
No,
it was originally a Vox.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
By I can never say this guy's name right. But I think that's part of listening to classical records. It's like you have to be cool with just butchering people's names and just writing through it, But what's his name? Skruashevsky.
Oh, yeah, but it's one of those things where I hear someone say it and then I memorize, but it's Skrovachevsky.
Skrovachevsky. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a Vox box set that I got from so a couple of years ago, the principal, if anyone watched that video I did with the former principal bassoonist of the Detroit Symphony.
I saw that.
So he gave me a bunch of his old records, and one of them was I think it was a Vox box set of Skrovachevsky in Minnesota recordings, and Skrovachevsky did some stuff with Detroit Symphony, so he had Skrovachevsky sign that record. So I have Skrovachevsky is not a household name. He's not a super valuable signature, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think I have that recording with him, and then I think I have like which is actually a cool recording, not that great sounding, but it's I think Perlman doing the Penderecki violin sonata.
Ooh, okay.
It's really good. It's like it's a CBS.
I haven't listened to that.
It's a CBS, so it's like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so look, we got. Sorry, I've been ignoring the chat a little bit here. We got Mazzy here. Thank goodness it's white wine and not beer with these classics.
Cheers.
Okay, so let's. I did want to jump into some news here. This has been announced. This is Impex. Their latest. They're doing an RCA Victor classical title.
Mm-hmm.
What is really interesting is whenever I'm like flipping through classical, I'm looking for Living Stereo from RCA. And I used to pick up the monos, but I stopped doing that. And I like because this is a mono recording, I may have like just flipped through it and ignored it. So I'm not, I don't think I've ever seen this record. I'm not familiar with it. So I just wanted to set this up. What do you guys think about this title?
I've never heard it.
Okay.
Yeah,
what about
it's not a record I own the original version of. So I had never heard of this composer, Mario Castelnuovo Tedesco. He was an Italian composer that lived from 1895 to 1968. And I have never heard any of his music before, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, Greg?
No, I think one of his pieces got played like the day before I went to the LA Phil, because my friend went to go see that also. It was Perlman doing, I think, that piece and Beethoven. But I didn't go, so I don't know. But I think he performed that piece that's on that recording.
Has Impacts released classical titles before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
So I'm just showing you this because you were just like, I love this one. And it was like, I just got a little stack of records of like things that I'd gotten recently. And there it is. And that is great also.
I think Mark is backstage.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Here we go.
There he is.
Look at that.
Hey, Mark.
Hey,
How's it
hi.
going?
Just dealing with a cat, very demanding cat. She might interrupt us occasionally. I'm so thrilled you guys are doing this, and
Yeah.
I'm really thrilled to be invited. Some of you I'm meeting for the first time. I have watched some of your videos a little bit, but Mike, hi. Felipe, hi. Now,
Hi, Mark.
and Greg, hi.
Hello.
And Michael, oh my God, look at you, all full metal jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God, I just want to hear all about it at some point. But
Yeah. After the stream, I'll tell you all about it. It's been fun. But we had our first wind ensemble rehearsal today. I find with these new earbuds, when I smile, they come out. So I got to not smile on this live stream.
So, Mark,
yes.
so very nice to meet you. I know you're a colleague
you.
of Michael's.
Yes.
My background in classical is extremely limited. So I've just started
Nothing wrong with
collecting.
that. Nothing wrong with that.
Just started collecting. I'm really going for UK pressings, like the
certain
old
labels. Yeah.
Deca and Columbia mostly. But then I do need to get some. I mean, I got to look at the US stuff too, like the Living Presence or Living Stereo, both those series.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I have a lot to
find
explore. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
anyway, and then Felipe's here. Do you want to introduce yourself, Felipe?
Yeah. I'm basically mostly to jazz, rock, pop music, hip hop, a little bit of everything. I have some CD classical boxes. I have a lot of Dutch gramophone stuff, the SACDs. I bought a lot of those back in the day. I don't have an extensive collection, but I appreciate it. I think I was kind of a teenager. What pushed me to get into classical was watching The Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Yes.
And but I lived in DC. I used to go to the Kennedy Center quite often to see as much as I could. That was an amazing experience.
That's amazing.
And, and most Mike, Greg, you guys put up this idea. I thought it would be nice to join, learn a little more, hear from you, and from like a beginner's perspective, right? What is classical music to you? What attracts you? What you listen to in a record? How to go about them. I think all those things would be kind of cool questions to go over today.
Oh my God, we could be here for hours.
Hey,
I think the most
classical
important
buzz.
is not to feel inadequate. I think a lot of people with classical music, they feel, oh my God, I feel it a little bit with jazz, and I'm pretty into jazz, and I just go, oh my God, there's just so much. But the important thing is just to trust your instincts, trust what you like, discover what you like, and there are so many ways to just expose yourself now. The fact that you don't actually have to buy product to hear stuff. You don't just have to listen to the radio. So, do all of that. Then the next stage of actually buying physical product, buying records, CDs, and I am totally, as you'll see behind me, from this pile of stuff I'm trying to listen to, I'm totally on board with CDs still. I think if you're into classical, you have to be, because some of the best stuff coming out now is just on CDs. So you just have to be completely open. I am at the advantage that growing up in England when I did, I was born in 1960, music was part of school. So everyone was handed a recorder, everyone had to learn to read music, everyone had to sing in the choir, and then if you got into it, you could start with an instrument and go further. And I just think it's a tragedy in this country in particular, it's not as good as it was in England either. But here, you know, they've taken art out of the curriculum, they've taken music out of the curriculum, and these are socializing influences. You know, if you do music, you learn how to work, both to take responsible for your bit and to collaborate with others. And I'm sure Michael can speak to this too. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. I mean, everyone should, unless they can't hold a tune, they should sing in a choir. You know, it's the most fantastic experience. So anyway, I won't drone on too much.
It very much depends, because everything in the U.S. is so localized. It very much does depend on where you are in the U.S. It determines what kind of music education you get. I mean, I grew up in Michigan when I was very young, and that was probably similar to what was happening in California. Was, you know, when I was growing up, music did exist in the schools, and as I was getting older, it was getting stripped out of the schools. And then I moved to Texas in high school and discovered that, one of the weird side effects of having high school football be a huge money-making industry in Texas is that you get well-funded band programs.
Yeah.
So Texas has one of the best public school music education systems in the country.
Wow.
And lots of those people, and it's funny because I think by and large Texas produces a greater proportion of people that are classical music majors in college than other states, but also a lot of people that are playing at a high level in high school, you know, go on to completely different careers. I mean, there were people that were playing in the orchestra with me in high school that were, you know, music was not their main thing. You know, they were going to Ivy League schools for tech after college and weren't gonna play music much after that. But they still practiced, you know, an hour, 2 hours a day in high school to play music.
Yeah, I mean, it's so if you have the advantage of that when you're a kid, it is a huge advantage. And again, in England at that time, there was just no sense that this was in any way not cool. I mean, you know, if you were into classical music, you did it. I was very fortunate in that I was in a school where the headmaster's son was a professional musician. And so instantly, you know, he was building up the music program. And, you know, so I started playing piano and cello when I was 8. I was starting singing in choir seriously when I was 7. And the English choir tradition is really amazing. So from the age of 7 until end of college, 22, I was singing in a serious chapel choir as well as bigger choirs. And I sang everything from Renaissance and medieval through to 20th century, big works, small works, all of it. But then my cello teacher was in the orchestra at Covent Garden. So he would get me free tickets to go to the opera from when I was about 9. Then he was in the BBC Symphony, so I could go to that. And you know, I did music seriously. Like Michael, I didn't follow it as a career, but, you know, to have that experience, I mean, it really helps as you're getting to know the repertoire. But working, as I have done in public radio, and my job for many years was to put together classical music and other kinds of music for NPR, it was all about how do I make this accessible and interesting to people, and not make it intimidating. And it's quite challenging, but it can be done. But like I say, I mean, I just heard instantly you guys saying, oh, you know, I'm just starting with this. I don't really know much. You know everything you need to know, which is, do I like it?
Yeah.
Or do I don't like it? And then you can disappear whole separate rabbit hole of records and all of that, which is its own whole wonderful universe.
Well, one question I have for you is, you know, a lot of times when I kind of research a recording, it comes up and people compare it against other performances, right? Yeah. So it's like, do I need to just like take this symphony and just like listen to that and everything they did to figure out what I like and then move on? Or do I just grab, you know, that one and then move on to the next and just go through it? And then you just, at, you know, some point you're listening to other versions of those things.
I think when I first started getting into classical on vinyl, This is like 15 years ago or something, right? When you could go to EMI Records and just everything would be like $5 or $2 or whatever, you know? And I would come home with stacks of records, you know? And I would just listen to them. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know like, oh, this is the pristine version of this and everyone thinks this one is garbage. And you know what I mean? I didn't have any of that in my head. I mean, I'd been listening to classical music on the radio since I was in high school, you know, but when I was really just bringing home records, I would just bring them home and listen to them. And then it's like some I really liked. And then you could kind of go down like, oh, you know, there's this record, you know, and then it's like, oh, I like Andre Previn. What else did he do? And then, you know, you just start to kind of like flow down whatever streams open for you. You know what I mean? To the source, and you're going to get there one way or the other. I don't think it really matters like what your starting point is. And I also think if you just started out, like you would understand this from jazz. Like if all you had was like whatever Analog Productions has put out as reissues, it might all sound really good, but that's not the whole, you know, canon of jazz. Right. So it's like, even when people say, oh, well, there's these recordings and these that are new, it's like, there's so much. There's just so much out there.
Well, yeah, you have to remember that one of the things the classical industry did to make itself an industry was this huge industry of comparing recordings. That's a whole other thing, both sonically, musically, etc. I mean, it supports a whole industry of, you know, and to be honest, I mean, all the central repertoire has 10 great recordings. You don't need to buy another one, but it's all about getting you to buy that next one. So that's a whole other issue unto itself. But in broad general outlines, you're absolutely right. I mean, just go and find stuff. Though having said that, you know, it's going to be very different if you pick up certain records and take them home. Like if you pick up American press Capitol records, Capitol EMIs, you're just going to want to give up on the spot.
That's where I learned that the hard way.
Yeah,
I have a good Capitol to show.
Don't buy, but
I have a good one to show.
Because this one is actually I mean, it's not amazing sounding, but this recording is quite good. I want to have this conversation, Michael, okay? Because this is a classic recording. I have it on CD, but I've always wondered about everyone, you need to understand, this is different from the EMI's HMVs. Oh yeah. This is not the Angels.
But I've always wondered what these sound like. I've only got any of them on the nice CD remasterings they did about 20 years ago. What does it sound like as a record?
Well, I would love to find out. My system isn't here yet. It's on a moving truck. I bought this at Tiger Records in Colorado for $5. But I had a later pressing of this, the second pressing of this, which is quite a bit more common. And
what does the label look like?
What's the label?
This is the Rainbow label.
Oh God, this is now you get all the record obsessives coming out here. And I want to see the label.
Yeah. This is pity on me. I haven't.
Oh
with the gold.
So apparently, according to a couple people I know, this is supposed to be much better sounding than the second press, which is
I would love to hear that. You know,
this is hard to find.
Performance.
Because last time I checked, this wasn't for sale on Discogs.
I've never seen that in the wild, or and only the CD. But actually, the CD versions, they did a reissue series of all of these, quite a few of these. I've got another Stokowski. They're wonderful, and this is an extraordinary symphony, and it's a great performance.
Yeah, I love 11.
Yeah, it's 11's one of his weirder ones.
Yes, but it's so cinematic, and I've been immersing myself in Shostakovich recently for my sins.
Yeah,
so.
a quick primer on Shostakovich. I love recommending Shostakovich to people because I think he's despite the fact that he's, I guess you could say his tonality was a bit modern, he's still super accessible, and anyone that it listens to rock music should like Shostakovich. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's approachable, especially for younger people. His later symphonies are, I think, are more interesting. They're a little less catchy, but they're definitely more interesting. 11, 12, 13. And then if you really want to get interesting, 14, 15, which are, it took me a while to get into, but
I
11
love
for people.
15. Yeah.
What years is this? Like, what period is this?
So Shostakovich wrote this symphony. This was premiered in 1957. This symphony is one of two symphonies he did that were kind of written for. I don't know if some anniversary of the Soviet Union. This was subtitled the year 1905. And if for people that don't know their Russian history, 1905 was kind of the quote unquote first Russian Revolution that established the Duma, the Congress in Russia. There were peasant revolts, et cetera, et cetera. It was considered the precursor to the both 1917 Russian revolutions. So Shostakovich wrote a symphony based on the 1905 Russian Revolution, and this was a widely popular symphony when it was premiered in Russia. However, there's a lot of people that say that when Shostakovich was writing this, he was also kind of commenting on another revolution, one that was happening a year before this was premiered. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
You're gonna go ahead.
Come on, Mark.
Okay.
You got this, Mark.
My brain is handled all these things.
1 year before 1957 was 1956, and in 1956 was the attempted Hungarian Revolution.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there are some parallels that Shostakovich was commenting on, because 1905, it was a semi-successful revolution, kind of an unsuccessful revolution, and that's kind of what the Hungarian Revolution was. And so, I don't know, a lot of people like to read that into the symphony, and for that reason, this has stayed a little bit more popular than the other patriotic symphony Shostakovich wrote, which was Symphony Number 12, which I think is a great symphony, but post fall of the Soviet Union, not a lot of people want to play Symphony Number 12, which is a celebration of the 1917 revolution.
Yeah,
Oh my God, there's so much to unpack here, and I kind of want to run upstairs to bring something to show you. But let's just talk about this very briefly. I'm actually I'm writing a review of this incredible box set that came out of Deutsche Grammophon, out of the Berlin Philharmonic, of their new music director, Petrenko, doing symphonies 8, 9, 10. Michael, it's incredible.
Those are so great. I listen to those in the studio when I'm painting all the time. They're so amazing, those versions.
I'm working on the review for Tracking Angle. Okay, but here's the fascinating thing about Shostakovich. And Michael knows all this, and he's just kind of indicated some of this. So when I'm at school and I'm discovering Shostakovich, there's a certain narrative about, okay, he wrote these pieces to celebrate these events, these pieces for these events. And then suddenly there came out this book called Testimony, which was a purported sort of autobiography where he had dictated his memoirs to this guy called Volkov, I think.
Yeah, but that's a pretty controversial book.
Well, this is where we're going to get into this. It's very controversial because he basically, if you read this book and you believed what it said, essentially you had to revisit all his music and realize it had been written in code. So, for example, earlier in his career, he had this huge crisis, one of many, where his opera Lady Macbeth of Mazenks, which was actually a huge hit, but very dark, Stalin came to see it one night, and Stalin was not happy. And he arranged for, the speculation that he actually dictated it, or he looked over the review that was published in Pravda, which basically said something like, wasn't it formalism instead of music, and this was corrupt Western music.
It almost certainly was, if not ghostwritten by Stalin, dictated by Stalin to someone to write, because that opera was hugely popular and got positive reviews until Stalin saw it.
Right. And then he also had just written his 4th symphony, which was uncompromisingly modernistic, and he withdrew it. He was terrified. He was, through this period of life, he was terrified that people were going to come and knock on his door and take him away, as had happened to so many of his compatriots. So he then wrote the Fifth Symphony, which was subtitled A Composer's Reply to Just Criticism. And it's a much more accessible traditional harmonic style and ends in triumph. So, for example, when this book came out, he said, no, you're completely misreading. That was code. The end of the symphony is not triumphant, it's dark. And one of the things you see since this book came out is different conductors conduct the end of a symphony differently. Likewise, when you had the Seventh Symphony, the Leningrad, which is very famous, extraordinary story. Shostakovich was in Leningrad during the siege, writing this symphony, and the conditions were horrendous. And they wanted to get the score out of the city so that it could be performed in the West. And this was actually one of the first missions of the CIA, which at that time was called, I think, the OSS or something like that. This was their first mission. They sent in spies to get the thing out on microfilm, smuggle it out across occupied Europe to America, where it was first performed by Toscanini, I think, wasn't it? Who first performed it? Someone like that. Or was it Stokowski?
I'm sorry.
It's someone like that. But the first movement, there's this long section in the first movement, which is like this repeated section, which gets louder and louder and louder.
And that's I'm trying to remember the composer, because there's layers of quotes in that, and it's.
I think he quotes all kinds of people throughout his symphonies, but everyone thought that was about the advancing Germans. And in this biography that came out, he said, no, that's not about the Germans. That's about this horror of Stalin's purges. So you had this really interesting conversation going on where a lot of his music is different from what you thought it was, if you accept Volkov. The scholarship is very mixed on it, but Shostakovich is a fascinating person to study in this way, and his music has all these extra musical qualities. His string quartets are much more private, but for example, the symphonies that I'm working on right now, 8, 9, 10, again, they have this kind of mixed message going on. But one of the things in particular is, if you listen, the 8th is an absolutely devastatingly dark portrayal of life.
It's my favorite. It's my
favorite too. 8 is like,
it's extraordinary. And not to get political, but if you want to vote for Trump and bring in the Republicans and then live in a totalitarian society, this is how you're going to feel. And it's
hold
not
on.
good.
Okay, hold on. So first of all, I've been ignoring the chat because I've been in a trance right now listening to this. Let's not get into
no. But his music
stream
is very And then when he wrote he wrote the 9th, which was meant to be a symphony of victory. After
and he made it a farce.
He made it a farce. So there's this double edge.
When you get to this one,
yeah,
fantastic. And is that the alto pressing?
No, this is a later pressing.
Okay.
I've been curious to get the alto pressing of that.
The alto pressing is, I finally forgot it at a reasonable price, and it is worth every penny.
Yeah, this was the only one that I found that wasn't at a very high price. Not that I don't pay high prices for everything, but like...
No, it's a very expensive record. But
that recording is
great.
That recording, I was lucky enough. I found the original postage stamp of that pressing actually at the In-Groove a number of years ago, and I would love to get because the problem with that record, of course, is that it's a lot of music crammed onto one disc, and the Alto puts it onto 2 LPs and makes it a little easier. But it's still a fantastic sounding recording. All the Bernstein gets deserves credit for introducing Shostakovich to the American audiences and popularizing his music through records. And if you don't own some version, CD, whatever, of Bernstein's recording of Shostakovich Fifth, I recommend you hunt that down.
It's my favorite, I think. If I had to pick one, that's the one I would pick.
But fortunately...
I was just going to jump in. I wanted to go back to the origin of this and just show something really quick, just to
Yeah.
mix it up. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just reading the
Oh
chat.
yeah, we kind of
and
didn't. We didn't talk about the impacts
honestly.
at all.
We gotta pick this up a little bit. So I just wanted to go back to that because I did want to show a record. And this is, so when we started talking Shostakovich, we were talking about Columbia. So we were saying Columbia records don't sound that great. This is a Speaker's Corner reissue cut from the analog tape, and it was confirmed by Kevin Gray, even though
Yes,
this is Columbia.
absolutely.
And he did a bunch of these for Speaker's Corner. So these are all analog Columbia, and they're done
They sound
how they
great.
should be.
They're fabulous.
Yeah.
So this
Probably
is
the best those records are ever going to sound.
Yeah.
Yes.
for
And you know,
sure.
the funny thing is you can't. They're kind of hard to identify which ones they are, like the Kevin Gray ones, because the like Discogs entries don't have like barcode identifiers, or
It's
like
all the Columbia ones, because
So-
the Columbia tapes were in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
he
all
did
the Columbia?
all of those.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is that they just stopped issuing them, and they're very hard to find now. They are absolutely the best sounding versions on vinyl. But the good news is that Sony Columbia is doing probably the best CD reissue program. They're doing these amazing box sets, and the
Okay.
remastering is superb. There's one behind me.
Is that the Ormandy set behind you?
That's I've got the Omni set. That's the Zell.
Oh, that's the
set.
Zell. Oh, I don't have the Zell. I wish I had the Zell.
Yeah, they repressed it, so you may be
Ooh.
able to get it now.
Okay, I'll have to
but-
look out for it.
But those, I've been desperately trying to find a bunch of those Speaker's Corner Columbias because
Oh right. I think he
they're
announced it.
fantastic.
He does a bunch of interviews, and on one of them he mentioned this. That's how I found out about it. So I think that
Wasn't that the one where I was at Pacific Audio Fest and I asked
Yes.
him about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Because I had
Yeah.
heard that he did those, and he never talked about it publicly, and
No.
I wanted to bug him about that.
I mean, the Bernstein Debussy record, I recently
Yes,
picked up
Prelude,
yeah, which is amazing. I just picked up the Glenn Gould Bach harpsichord piano concertos, another essential. I'm trying to get hold of the Juilliard Bartok. But all of those are wonderful. You can find them.
I have that version of the Trout that
Oh
Speakers
right.
the Columbia.
Oh, is
Okay.
it with Sirkin probably? Sirkin playing
Yeah,
piano?
yeah, with
probably?
Sirkin. Yeah,
You see,
this is one I was just thinking. This record,
Oh,
Yes.
essential.
Yes.
so
essential.
amazing. And this is only like an original 2i.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
wish someone would redo this
No,
one.
they did that on
They
Speaker's
did.
Corner.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Well
You know,
worth tracking
actually-
down.
Nobody publicized it. It was like nobody knew about it.
No, it's like when I run into Speaker's Corner records in the wild, they're not, you just find them. Like, I don't
Just get
know.
them,
yeah.
I've never even seen, I don't think, a complete discography like on one page of everything that they've done.
No,
You
I
sent me
mean, and now they're just cutting right back. I mean, it's extraordinary. Just when the whole vinyl revival is getting going, they're
Yeah.
cutting back.
Can I show some?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I
Yes.
just jump in and show some records? I feel like, Greg, to your
Absolutely.
point, so since I am new, the Greg has really hooked it up and sent me a bunch of records. I wanted to flip through them, talk about the labels, because there's a variety of stuff that he sent me. So I think this might be like a fun, just quick hit piece here. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let me-
absolutely.
okay, cool. I think this could be fun. So all right,
We
I
can
showed
all
this
rate
already.
them between 1 and 10 as you hold them up.
All right, so this one is the EMI Odeon. It's got the Odeon sticker here.
That
And then
just means it's
also-
an import.
Also the Odeon sticker here. Right.
It
So
means
this is
nothing other than the
a-
fact that it's an import. It's an English pressing. Nothing, no difference.
So how do you rate this performance and sound?
That's a nice performance. I just sent it to you because I also have the box that it comes from.
I love
So,
these
I love
flip maps.
everything Adrian Bolt.
This?
Adrian Bolt's wonderful. I heard him conducting in person in Windsor Castle, which was amazing. Paul Tortelier playing. Oh, I can see Michael getting all excited.
Well, I like Adrian Bolt is not. I don't have a lot of his repertoire in my collection. He's not like
so the thing is, he was one of the top recording artists for EMI. He's Mr. English music. So I mean,
yeah, I have his like Elgar Second Symphony and like a few of the others.
I mean, they're all amazing. And essentially, if you're going to buy English music of a certain period, you're going to buy Bolt recordings. They're recorded mainly by the Christopher Parker, the two of them, Parker, Michael, help me. Anyway, the EMI recording staff were amazing, but they have Christopher Bishop and Christopher Parker. They recorded a lot of these.
Where would this be recorded? Like what? Like is it?
Probably in EMI. Probably at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Deca would almost always use Kingsway, but I don't think EMI used Kingsway much, did they?
They didn't, only for the big shows. They did mainly, but these are all of these. So this is one of the great collecting areas. EMI postage stamps period of the 70s, both first pressings and reissues. It doesn't matter if it's Odeon, it just means it came.
No, I know. I think it's cool.
It's very cool,
and they're very like. They're sometimes harder to find in the US, but typically they're very affordable, especially if you're ever in Europe. They're just everywhere. And they sound great.
The thing is, so what
like
they did was
London's here.
He branched out into other repertoire. So he did the 4 Brahms symphonies. He did, I think, the 2 Brahms serenades. They're all lovely performances. Are those with the London Philharmonic? Probably the London Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah, no, they're with,
which is with my favorite orchestra of that period. They have a slightly richer tone to the LSO. You have to remember there were 5 orchestras. There are 5 orchestras in London. The Philharmonia, the London Philharmonic, the LSO, the Royal Philharmonic.
Did they all record at Abbey Road? Did everybody record?
No, they all record all over. The tragedy of London is it's this thriving music scene. It has all these orchestras. It doesn't have a single decent concert hall with decent acoustics.
Okay.
It's a whole other story.
And it's hard. It's notoriously a difficult city for classical musicians because those orchestras, from what I understand, they don't pay that great for living in London, and they work those musicians to death. And so a lot of people don't stay. Those orchestras are always cycling through musicians, it seems like, because they people get burnt out.
Yeah, especially these days, you know.
We got to move on. So next one, this is my first Chesky record, and I've seen Chesky in the bins before. Are these well, like I don't know much about them. Can you tell me? This is also Ravel, which I do have this Ravel already. I have the Columbia one.
So Chesky were basically the first of
Daphne
the
and
independent. Chloe? They were the first of the independent, well, one of the first of the independent record labels doing audiophile AAA vinyl remasters, and many of them, So most people consider them a halfway house between original pressings and then getting into classic records, analog productions. I think they're fine, but you can do with those. They're really good, but you can do better by going to either the classic records, the analog productions. However,
so where was this first press? This is the Boston Symphony Orchestra with Charles Munch, and
that would have been in Living Stereo.
That was Living Stereo.
Living Stereo. Okay,
but so Chesky does have some unique pressings of recordings that were never issued.
Yeah, the Reiner.
One of which is essential, which is Fritz Reiner doing the Brahms First Symphony.
Did I say his last name right? Did I pronounce that right?
Reiner, Munch? R-E-I-N-E-R. And he was the legendary conductor.
No. Charles, Munch. Charles Munch.
Charles Munch. But I'm just saying.
Am I saying that right? Is it Munch? Is his name? Is that how you pronounce it?
Munch, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and his.
So is he American? If he's Living Stereo, does that mean he's conducting in the U.S.?
Yes, Boston Symphony. Probably.
Is he American or was he? Did he immigrate?
Yes. He was the music director at the Boston Symphony before Steinberg, who's just had a bunch of stuff re-released on Deutsche Grammophone. But the Charles Munch Berlioz Symphony Fantasy is a famous one.
That's a great.
There we go. These are lovely records.
When was this ballet made?
Fantastic record.
So it's the full ballet. It was written for Diaghilev's Ballet Russe, which also did the Stravinsky ballets. But what's wonderful about the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and Michael can speak to this, and we've really heard it exceptionally on some of these Deutsche Grammophon original source, is they were famous for having what they called the French sound. And part of that was they had this amazing wind and brass section. And it's just unbelievable.
I don't know if I'd call that sound. I don't know if I'd call that sound French, but they had a long history of being associated with French music as having French conductors.
It's not the whiny French we hear from 60s French orchestras, but but they sound fabulous in French music, going all the way through
really
Ozawa and all of that. And when you listen to, I gave a rave review to the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique on Deutsche Grammophon originals,
which I'm bummed I haven't gotten to listen to yet.
That's the best one out of the whole.
Yeah, I know you really liked it.
Oh, I really liked it, man. I thought it was amazing.
Unbelievable. But when you get
what's that series called? What's that series?
The original source.
Well, we're going to have to talk about this while we're on this call. But the slow movement has all these wind solos, which it's so exquisite. It's so exquisite. Okay, sorry. You want to show another record? Oh, okay.
These are the reissue series you're talking about?
Yeah.
So which one was the best?
So you've heard all of them, right? And you're reviewing them?
Oh, I've heard all of them, yeah. And
I'm still waiting for mine to arrive. I had to order it from Germany, so I don't know when I'll get it.
I had to order the Steinberg box from Amazon Japan.
Yeah, I got it from Groovesland in Germany.
Don't even go there about the issue of buying them and the whole 9 yards. It's such a mess, which is extraordinary. But no, I mean,
they're trying to fix that though, right?
They are trying, but you're dealing with a huge corporation. I try to update information on tracking angles as soon as I hear it. Don't worry, I've talked to them about this. It's a huge problem. Now, the one from the series we're talking about, it's out of print now, but you might still be able to find it in some places. It's the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique with Ozawa. It's one of the best sounding records you're ever going to hear in your life. It's unfreaking believable.
Absolutely one of the best.
You got a scandal in the classical community. Does Chad carry?
No, actually,
he's trying to. He's trying to.
He's trying to, yeah.
And the problem is there is this huge disconnect between head office and Deutsche Grammophon and their American distributors. And it's driving everyone nuts. So your best bet, if you're willing to pay the high price, pre-order from Deutsche Grammophon directly, pre-order from Presto Classical in England. They're really great outlet for classical music, and their rates are slightly lower. Keep an eye on centerstage.com, which is Deutsche Grammophon's retail outlet in the US. They've got the 4 represses of the first 4 of the series. And then otherwise, I mean, with Elucidisc and Acoustic Sounds, it's driving them crazy. It's unbelievable they're screwing this up.
Do they have Music Direct? Is Music Direct?
Yeah, Music Direct as well, I think, but they have the same problems. Very quickly, why this series is so important and why it's going, and the stuff I know that's happening, but I can't tell you about, but it's going to rewrite the entire book about doing all analog reissues. It's just extraordinary what Rainer Maillard and Sydney are doing technologically. I can't talk about it. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah.
But what's unique about this series and is really extraordinary is Deutsche Grammophon always had a slightly lesser reputation sonically than Deca's, EMI's, etc. Great performances, but sonically not so great. If you were a real collector, you went for the earlier recordings from the 60s and earlier, and you went for the big tulip pressings because they were mastered all analog.
I have a super heavy tulip pressing. And man, I was like, this looks great. The condition looks good. I brought it home. I cleaned it. It felt like it was like over 200 grams.
No, they're heavy.
And
yeah.
I don't think it was noisy. I was really unimpressed with it.
It's a crapshoot. Do you know what record it was? Do you know what the actual record was?
I mean, actually, that's a thing. A lot of these heavier early pressings were actually pressed on somewhat noisier vinyl. I mean, that's somewhat of a big problem with some of the EMIs, like the really old EMIs or the first edition Decas. A lot of times, the edition 2 Decas, even though they're worth less, are on quieter vinyl.
Absolutely correct. And anyone who really wants to get into the weeds here, they have to go to Michael's channel. He did several videos which are exemplary. He goes through the entire Deca catalog, talks about all the different pressings, what they are, what they look like, how much they're going to cost you. He did one on that, and then he did one on sort of Deca EMI, a combination of labels. And these,
but I didn't. That wasn't really formal. I was just showing a bunch of Deca records.
Yeah, but that was super.
A bunch of EMI records.
For someone just starting out, those videos were essential. Oh, not this. Sorry. I want to. Okay, so So I have this Mozart thing here. This is a tulip.
Right? Oh yeah, and a classic cycle. Yes.
That sounds okay, and then this one did not sound good, and I think mine is a test
much
pressing
older.
too.
That's maybe it's actually stereo. Okay,
so, I don't know.
I think that's mono.
Well, that's why when I discuss like those UK pressings and the Decas here, which are UK pressings, I'm sorry, the Londons here, which are UK pressings.
Always London.
Those like clearly sound like excellent. So when I heard those, that also was helpful. Like looking for those London bluebacks here, those were like the first few records I knew how to identify those at least. So I
well, I mean, Deca is my favorite label still to this day. I mean, I didn't even realize what I had as I was buying them growing up, and the EMIs as well come very close. But what is extraordinary about these DGs is, first of all, we said they were going to start doing the 70s recordings, and it was like, why? Because they're wonderful performances, but the sonics are not good. And then we found out the whole story behind that. There we go. Yeah. I mean, is it a made in UK?
Yeah.
You have to make sure. Yeah. Fantastic. And it'll cost a fraction of the original Deca. Oh, these are really nice ones.
That's an interesting one, because that recording, specifically the early pressing, that's a pancake pressing, right? Yeah,
pancake.
I have that one.
Means the deep groove is what that means. The deep groove's on like the outermost part of the label.
The most interesting thing I found about that particular recording, because I have that, is it starts out harsh and it gets better as it goes along.
Yeah, like they were EQing it as it was getting until it sounded right.
Yeah, like 10 minutes into it, it sounds fantastic, but the first 10 minutes are a little rough.
There's a lot of live Grateful Dead that's like that too.
Oh, now the Schulte, LSO, Bartoks on Deca from the 60s are must-buys. Yeah, they're fantastic,
and they're cheap.
This was a mono, but I saw this in the store. This is a Stravinsky.
Speaker's Corner has done that.
Yeah,
because the original is quite expensive.
Look at this. I'm working my way through this.
But these are mono.
Yeah. Okay, I'm working my way through this. This is the CD set of all the stereo ensembles. Personally, and I'm not alone in this, I think there's something about the ensemble catalog on Deca. It's just magic. There's just something about those records that's
He's
magic.
on like everything though. Every time I look at a Deca, because I like collecting the label, it's like he's like on 80% of the records.
Yeah. And he went and recorded. It's and I'll tell you, anyone. I'm going to write several articles about ensemble on vinyl in this set. Just to say right up front, this box set they've just come out with remastered. The sonics are amazing. I could actually live without my records if I had to and have this set. The sonics are that good. And there's a ton of stuff I'd not heard because they're much rarer records. But anyway, no, there's real magic in these records. And I'm sure all of you, Michael, Greg, if you see an ensemble record in a nice clean copy, you grab it because they're
always.
just.
Well, yeah, but
they're
that's
just
because I'm a
magic.
neurotic. That's why.
Yeah.
I think I have most of them.
Yeah, they're just really
Greg,
special.
what do you think is I mean, you do you talk about interpretation actually way more than I do on my channel. Like, and you've shown some ensembles and some shootouts. What do you think about that orchestra's interpretations?
I like ensemble. I think the main one that I did in a video was the three-cornered hat, where it was like I didn't really like his interpretation as much as de Burgos and like more Spanish. Yeah, like I mean, this is such a classic record. Like we all have this on one version or another, or two or three.
I have a few versions of this recording.
Yeah, and it's great. It's sonically impeccable and amazing, and I like the interpretation, but it's just not as like, it's not as flamenco-y. It's not as dirty as some of the other interpretations. Like it doesn't sound, and this is a whole other thing, and I don't like to get into it, but it doesn't sound like culturally as it should, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's a completely valid criticism, completely valid. And obviously, I don't think many of his recordings would necessarily be considered the benchmarks, but they were at the time frequently the only ones or pioneering ones. In certain cases, he conducted, early performances of works. Some of the stuff that's really interesting is actually the stuff you don't listen, is not so well known, not the Ravel, Debussy, 20th century, but I love his set of the Haydn Paris symphonies. I love his set of the Beethoven symphonies and the orchestra. So Michael being an oboist, I mean, the orchestra is famous for its rather reedy first oboe, second oboe. And
the English horn in that orchestra is,
yeah.
I have some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, can I just jump back in real quick? As you know, I keep interjecting, and I realize that the conversation is great, but I feel like every time I do this, we get to another great conversation. So I'm not too upset about it. So
can I address?
I want to go all the way back to the beginning with the Impex records.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think this is the only Impex classical title that I have. I mean, I have all the ones, but this is such a great remaster of this one.
It's a wonderful record.
So I can talk a little bit, because I mean, most people on here, Mike and Felipe probably don't know, but the three of us know about Dynagroove. So I'll kind of give it like a little spiel. So
I'm gonna fill up my drink. You talk about Dynagroove.
So for those that are classical collectors, RCA Living Stereo. Oh, hey, Paul. RCA Living Stereo was like one of the heights of like American stereo orchestral recording, and those Reiner and Munch and all those in the English RCAs, they all sound fantastic. And then eventually, in the 60s, RCA introduced this technology called Dynagroove, which was essentially a compression method they used in the cutting of the records to make them sound a little more like listenable on casual stereos, so that there wasn't this wide dynamic range. It was essentially making.
Was there a benefit to the amount of time you had on a track? Because you compressed
a little bit, but it was more about how things are mastered for the radio, where it's like, you're not mastering for a super like soft softs and loud louds. You're kind of squashing everything to make it sound listenable on subpar equipment. That's kind of what RCA was doing, and those records aren't bad. I've kind of been reevaluating the Dynagrooves in the last couple of years and collecting a few, and they're not bad sounding records depending on which one you get, but they're just not what they were doing before. They're not as great as the recordings that were coming before.
And from what I've heard is that actually some of them, even though they were labeled Dynagroove, they were not actually pressed that way.
Yeah, that is true. But
possible to know which.
Yeah, they talk about it a little bit in the RCA Bible, which is very difficult to get now. I'm lucky enough to have it scanned.
How can anyone get it other than you scanning it and sending it to me?
Which I did I do that yet?
No.
I might also.
Oh well, I will scan it and send it to you. So here's how I got mine. So for the people in the peanut gallery, the RCA Bible was a book published by Jonathan Valen of the Absolute Sound, where he took a few other reviewers' inputs on this. Basically made a guide of all the living stereos and what stampers they listen to that sound really good and which particular living stereos sound good. Years ago, I heard about this, and I saw that it was going for crazy money on eBay. So I went to my school library, and I just thought I would try to get a copy on interlibrary loan. And lo and behold, one was sent to me from a library in Albany. And I had it, and I manually scanned it on my cheap printer, all 100-some pages of it, and now it's just on my Google Drive.
So what? So it's a listing, and then he goes into every. Is it one author?
I mean, Jonathan Valen is the author, but he compiles reviews from a couple other people that also have out-of-print RCA guidebooks. Okay. And so it does talk about a couple good sounding Dynagrooves in that. And so I've kind of used that to like be on the lookout for a couple Dynagrooves. But the thing I'll say about Dynagroove is that this was a process that was done in the cutting of the records. It was introduced in the cutting of the records. And so to my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong because a lot of these mastering engineers are either passed on or, in retirement, that it's not on the master tape. And I think that was pretty much demonstrated by the wonderful sounding Impex reissue of that Dynagroove recording that sounds nothing like a Dynagroove. It's very dynamic. It's incredibly expressive.
Yeah,
that Heifetz Piatigorsky
looks like this. It'll always say Dynagroove down there. So it looks just like a shaded dog, but it says Dynagroove.
I mean,
yeah, they were advertising this technology. They were very proud of it.
This is the tragedy. The master tapes of Columbia, the master tapes of RCA, these are really fine recordings, as is being revealed in many of these CD box sets. I got the RCA box set of all Peter Serkin's recordings. Wonderful pianist, not so well known. I had quite a few of those on record, but the remasterings are incredible. But this Dynagroove issue takes us right back to the Deutsche Grammophon issue. And it's this situation of how the record company deliberately degraded their product for various reasons. And this is exactly what was revealed by Deutsche Grammophon when they started releasing
what was the reason
series.
for why did DG do that?
So what they did was in the cutting of the records, I'm not a technology person, so pardon me if my explanation is not perfect. You can go, there's a wonderful video in which the people who really know about this talk about it. It's the original release of these albums. They basically, because they knew they were, first of all, these recordings in the 70s were all recorded 4-track, 2-track direct sound, 2-track ambient mic, because they were all interested in doing quadraphonic records. So everything was recorded that way.
Is that a problem? Is there any? Is that just?
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem at all. It's not a problem at all. But what happened at the time? They decided Deutsche Grammophon. Now EMI did issue records quadraphonic. It's another story. But Deutsche Grammophon decided not to do this. They couldn't figure out how to do it. So all the albums that came out in the 70s were basically derived from a stereo mixdown of just the two direct tracks to a 2-track stereo quarter-inch or whatever. And then it was sent to the cutting plant, and they were told specifically to limit the amount of information in the groove. Unlike Deca and EMI, they deliberately cut off ambient information, even just from the stereo mics. Forget about the 2 other tracks. They cut that information, and they cut down the dB sensitivity of it. The reason for this was that the Deutsche Grammophon records were so popular, they were being pressed in plants all over the world. And they felt to have quality control over this, what they would do is they would produce a master for the tape for the plants around the world to cut from, which had the least room for error in it. So what this meant was, for example, one of the recordings,
and the importance of this is ultimately down the chain when the consumer gets something,
it doesn't sound that good.
It doesn't sound that good, but it also isn't like defective either, right? Like it'll play.
It's
on
not
anything,
defective. Exactly.
So you're not getting returns. So you're not getting
And
returns.
Deutsche Grammophon were also famous for having the quietest vinyl. At least it was perceived that way on record players at the time. They had the quietest vinyl of the classical companies. I mean, critics actually wrote about this. Richard Osborne.
Because they polished the stampers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think
So,
Deutsche Grammophon has almost the same exact story as the original Blue Notes, and as to why that, like, the bass was rolled off and the treble was cut and the mid-range was flammed out because it could be played on more systems.
Right.
It is compressed. Yes.
So Rainer Maillard at Emil Berliner Studios. So Rainer Maillard is someone we should all be unbelievably grateful to, because this man has held the torch for vinyl, not just in classical, in general, for decades. He started out as an intern at Deutsche Grammophon in 1984. And I mean, he worked with everyone and did everything. And, you know, he started out very much in digital. He did the first, when they had to remaster the Carry-On digital recordings, he went back and remastered them for the Gold series, which are so infinitely superior. That's a whole other story. But anyway, he had been pestering Deutsche Grammophon to do vinyl reissues for years. In the meantime, he had pioneered bringing back direct to tape recordings with a series of extraordinary records, both at the Berlin Philharmonic and with the Bamberg Symphony, and his whole thing was, because he was a real historian, he had this notion of, let's go back to the original idea of the cutting lathe being like a microphone, which is what the original records were. It went straight into, you know, the thing, and acoustically, it was just done like that. And so that was this radical idea he had. They did some very successful issues with the Berlin Phil. The
Bruckner 7 is
is just out of this world.
The Brahms is good. The Brahms is. Has anyone here heard the Brahms?
I've not heard the Brahms, but I know you've talked about it.
I missed it.
Wasn't that the Kevin Gray box?
Like no, it's direct to disc.
No. Okay.
So this was the first Berlin Philharmonic direct to disc.
Oh, I'm thinking of the Mahler. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like a $2,000 record now.
So the thing is, there's no room for error. You just do it direct to disc. And he had this young cutting engineer.
It was a binaural recording. It was a 2-microphone recording.
Exactly. And when they issued the Simon Rattle did a set of all the Beethoven symphonies for the Berlin Philharmonic label. And the version that came out on CD and Blu-ray, that was mic'd one way. But when they issued the record set, which is a wonderful sounding set, whatever you may think of the performances, and they're, you know, some of them are better than others, but they only use the 2 microphones set up. It's a completely different sound. I mean, when you talk to Rainer, he talks about if I know I'm recording something and it's gonna be on vinyl, I use different mics. I don't know people who think that way, really. So he was trying to get DG back into vinyl for 7 years, basically, and finally they did it. Both.
Good night, Stephen. Thanks for staying up for us. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mark. That's the thing about a live stream. You got to sometimes quip to the.
Oh
yeah.
So what they knew was that these master tapes from the 70s existed in 4 tracks, 2 tracks of which were surround sound in full frequency, sounding amazing. And what he did was he took a regular tape recorder and he engineered it so that he could play all 4 tracks on this machine. And then he custom built a mixing desk so he could mix not to a stereo mix down, directly to the cutting
I have one
lathe.
of these. I have the Chasing the Dragon.
And this is why these original source records are so stunning, because you're not only getting the ambient information, but Sydney's also developed new technologies in how she cuts the discs. You're getting this huge frequency response, and they're just extraordinary. And like I say, you won't believe what's coming next.
We're
They're
talking
taking
this
this
series?
technology even further. Yeah, this
So
is
which one of
it's kind of
which one of
funny.
these did
It's
you
kind
say
of
was your favorite? I'm sorry, which one did you say was the best sounding?
I think the best one is the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique,
Okay,
followed
where's
closely
that?
by well, I also think the Strauss Four Last Songs is amazing. That just came out.
that?
So the first four that came out, you've got at the bottom here, the Kleiber Beethoven, the Stravinsky, the Gilels, the Mahler. These have all now been repressed in non-limited editions. So you can buy all those at regular prices. They all sound really amazing, but I think the best sounding ones are the Kleiber and the Stravinsky.
Yeah.
What's
the Kleiber is just a combination of sound and performance, I think. Greg, did you end up listening to the Kleiber? I don't remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh,
I like it. I like it.
This
I
Kleiber?
definitely like the Stravinsky and the Symphonie Fantastique better. But the Kleiber, and like here's a question. Why didn't they start by putting out the 5?
Well, 5 was done by
That was done.
I'm trying to remember if it was Speaker's Corner or Deutsche Grammophone. That was done reissued a couple years ago.
But it's 2-track. It's not 4-track. That's why all these records that are being reissued are from when they were recorded 4-track with 2 tracks being ambient. And but what was something else I was going to say? One of the other things that's absolutely fascinating about listening to these is on certain of them, and I talk a little bit about this in my reviews, is there is so much detail. You can actually hear how the engineers are miking and manipulating the sound in real time in their mix, because they're mixing multiple mics or minimal, certain of the DG engineers did minimal miking, some had more, whatever, but they're mixing in real time to 2 tracks. They're not doing multi-track. But Felipe, you can hear how they are manipulating the recording.
Let me just jump in real quick. Felipe, are you getting any of these DGs? Have you picked up any?
Yes, I ordered the Symphonie Fantastique. I'm waiting for it to arrive.
Oh, right. Okay.
And what did you think?
I haven't received yet, but it looked interesting to me. I checked all the reviews, and I think that was the one to get started, and then figure out if I'm jumping on more. But I'm definitely
that's good. That's on my list to listen to when I get the system set up, because it showed up like right after, like right as I was about to leave for basic. And then now
and I think it's still available now. Yeah, I think it's still available.
Where are they pressed? Easy. Are they cute? Are they pressed in Europe or where?
Optimal.
Okay.
Yeah. And with Velvet Glove, they literally cut them, and it's put in a taxi and it's taken to Optimal. Everything they actually worked really, really closely with Optimal to just supercharge the whole process. I mean, Rainer Maillard is a true visionary, and he's got plans. And like I say, one of the reasons we've got vinyl happening the way it's happening is because of him, because he was just like Framer, this lone voice in the darkness, along with a few people like Chad, etc., Impex, doing this stuff. But what's tragic here is that Deutsche Grammophone is part of Universal, which is also Deca, Philips, and what are Deca doing? They're cutting reissues from digital files, and I did a review of their redo version of the Schulte Ring Cycle, and my conclusion was that the SACD was better than the vinyl, because
didn't Miles show off at that?
Wait, so
someone take away that man's lathe. That man has butchered more records.
He's going to be butchering more. I've got.
So what's this source? Is the source? You're saying
it's all high res digital. Yeah. That guy's cuts of the Cure have been so preferred.
So
well, it doesn't matter as long as it's a good mastering. I mean, in my opinion. So I mean, it's a little segue. I feel like we should be showing some records.
Yes, I just very quickly. There's no reason why you can't make an excellent sounding record from a digital file. If the record sounded as good as the SACD, I would give it an unqualified
I have the theory that it's like if
And
it's
so he's going to show some esoteric, which is right to this
Yeah.
point.
like if it's
Yeah.
recorded to tape for me, I think it's going to sound best analog. If it's recorded digital to begin with, it's going to sound better digital. I think most of the however you want to say it, the shitty sound comes from the crossing of the two mediums that really shouldn't be crossed. You know,
Well,
like
some engineers like to take digital, put it to tape, and then cut from tape.
Yeah. So
Which
I mean,
you know,
That's
it's
also-
kind of a tangent, but
which I'm not saying that I'm not making. I know that.
I mean, I know
people
that
have
like
opinions
I've
about
done
that.
this, and I know people do this in digital recording. Like I will use a tape machine almost as like a preamp before it hits the computer, you know, to really try and get whatever that is that tape gives it onto the record.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I
mean,
think
for my dissertation recording, the mastering engineer I worked with, who's a brilliant mastering recording engineer I worked with, it was a digital recording, but he did an analog mastering of it, not on tape, but it would use an analog board for it. So I wanted to show these esoterics because these are expensive records I'm about to show. So Greg and Mark, of course, know about Esoteric, but for those that don't know, Esoteric is this Japanese company that are primarily known as a digital company, and that's both in terms of issuing digital super audio CDs and also making digital DACs and super audio CD players. And they do a really, really good job of doing really high quality digital SACD remasterings of things and DSD remasterings of things. And I have here their new series of Esoteric vinyl pressings, and these are digital records. This is the famous Deca three-cornered hat, and this is another recording that's been reissued to death, the Leningrad Tchaikovsky 5. I haven't listened to it yet. But I have a lot of.
I am so intrigued because these are very famous analog recordings, but they're doing them digitally.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say about them.
Yeah, I'm writing it up for
the other day, and I almost bought the Swan Lake. And what was the other one that came out? Was Daphnis and
Swan
Chloe,
Lake?
maybe?
I think so. Yeah.
I think it was those two, but I think they were $125 each.
Yeah.
And then
the only reason I bought these is they had that acoustic sounds sale where basically all the audiophile records were on sale, but these were. So I got 15% off.
So the other thing to say about Esoteric is that their digital remasterings for dual layer CD SACD are unbelievably great. And anyone who's collecting classical and wants to get certain recordings that are available from Esoteric, they're worth every penny. They're just incredible. Likewise, the Emi or Berliner mastered single layer SACDs, which preceded these original source things and kind of paved the way for showing just how good these recordings were, because everyone thought the recordings themselves were bad. And what this has all revealed is actually these recordings are pretty bloody great. It will not remove my personal affection for Deca and EMI.
Hey, just to interrupt, somebody just tried to join. I'm not familiar with your name or who you are, so I kicked you. If we know you, you can come on up. If not, just hang out in the gallery and get to know us, and you can come up, a little later.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So one of the things I'm doing once I get my system set up, which will probably be in about 2-3 weeks, I don't know, is I'm going to do a write up on those Esoteric reissues, because I do have a few versions of those, and I'll be able to compare them directly. But I've always loved the Esoteric SACDs. They're expensive, but they're
expensive, but they're worth every penny.
Yeah.
I compared the new Abado, the Rite of Spring, which was in the original source, with the Emi or Berliner SACD, and it was really, really fascinating, because basically it came down to it's such a minute difference, but on some level the record just did have it, but there are many recordings which you don't have those choices. So the other thing that my art and co are pretty committed to is they want to try and make digital sound better. So I just wrote the article announcing the release of the latest batch of original source, and they're reissuing the Giolini 3 Bruckner symphonies, which were recorded early digital with the Vienna Philharmonic. These are amazing recordings. And, I'm sure Rainer and Sydney have somehow managed to make them sound even better.
What records were those? I'm sorry.
This is it's just been announced. It's Giolini, Carlo Maria Giolini, and he's doing the 3 Bruckner last symphonies, 7, 8, 9. It's a box set, and it'll be, if you're into this music, this is a big Bruckner 200th anniversary, so we're going to have Bruckner coming out of our ears.
He was born in 1824.
Yeah. Yes.
Church
Awesome.
organist.
You were right.
These are,
and honestly,
so
for people that don't know Bruckner, if you like Mahler, you're probably going to like Bruckner.
Yes. This
is 3. This is
a classic.
Greg sent me this. I'm pretty sure this is a Testament reissue. Is that right?
Yes, it is Testament. Yeah. No, the original would cost you thousands.
Yeah.
So this is.
I have a few of those Testament reissues of the Bruckner Schurig. I have the Schurig. I have 8 and
probably have
9.
9.
I have 8 and 9.
I have 9.
And I think is 7 available as well, or no, 3. They did 3. The 9th is phenomenal. Yeah. Those Testaments
but
are really
Bruckner,
good.
some of those early Bruckner symphonies, I wouldn't call them approachable. I mean, Greg, you were talking before the stream started that you just saw Bruckner 1 with LA, and it's they're probably more for diehard fans. Whereas I think 7, 8, 9, which is what this box set is, those are really good places to start. I mean, I kind of started in my Bruckner journey with 7, and I feel like that's a pretty good place. Yeah, Rob, come up. You can.
Favorites, even 5 and 6, I really, really love. I like them. I mean, even 1 is good. It's just when you're seeing it live and it's long.
Four is okay.
I was explaining to Michael, it's like it didn't really have sort of like a traditional form. It didn't have movements that went into one another. It was like a movement that started from silence, worked itself up into a huge crescendo, dropped back down to silence. They would stop, then another one would start. So it was just this like peaking and dropping for like an hour. It was like
very, very hard to conduct and pull off. Even
I'm
great
sure.
full.
I'm sure.
It could sound just exactly the way you sounded with big brass and then nothing. And
yeah, and what was weird was I was sitting on the side of the stage, so I was looking down onto the orchestra. So I had timpani and brass in front of me, and then all the strings on the other side.
Oh God!
So that also made it like a really crazy mix. You'll never hear it that way on a record,
Well, he was,
but it must have been. I would have been nerding out listening to because there's so many just like chorale moments of brass in Bruckner's music.
Yeah, the brass was amazing. It was really amazing.
Listening to the LA Phil brass hit those perfect intervals, because that's got to be hard to do for an hour.
Yeah, it was good. It was just like it was taxing. You know what I mean? Like you had to work for that.
No, you really do. I mean, I heard. So the recording we were talking about earlier of Haitink doing the 7th Berlin Phil, his last concert with them, recorded direct to disc. I heard him conduct the 7th with the Vienna Phil here in LA. I heard him conduct one of my great experiences at the Proms in London some 20 years ago. He did the 9th with the Dresden Staatskapelle, which is my favorite orchestra, full stop, and my favorite in Bruckner, and it was astonishing. And it was promptly followed. It being the Proms, we then stayed for an all-night concert of Indian music. That contrast was amazing. So you have to. It's performed by everyone and his uncle now, and with variable results. In this set, the Giolini 9 is my favorite.
I just want to interrupt. We have somebody backstage here that I'm going to introduce, friend of the channel, and I would put his level of collecting classical at
Oh
my level.
wow!
Oh, Rob's been buying some classical.
That my level might be below yours, but Michael's been with me when I bought classical albums. So
I know who you are. I watched in sort of a state of slight suspended imminent horror you guys visiting the record collector Sandy on Melrose, and I thought, oh my God, what happened? Did everyone come out alive? I mean,
I realize what that experience was like, and it's like, if anyone here is like into whiskey at all, going to the record collector is like going to one of those stores where they have all the allocated bottles of everything, but they jack up the prices, which is why they still have them. And it's like it's like they have the Eagle Rare or they have the Blantons, and you want to buy it, but they jacked up the price 150%.
Yeah,
I've shopped with Michael many times, and obviously, typically he'll gravitate to where the classical is. That's one of the rare times where I heard him go, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yes, I mean he has.
That guy did have 2 times I've been with Michael. One time we went to a book record store in San Pedro, and the guy had a back room that was
place is great.
I watched that video too. Yeah.
That
sounded amazing.
And that store, I think, was interesting because it was like, it's not that they had like anything crazy, but it's just, you could tell that like that classical section had just not been picked through in like 5 to 10 years. And it's just like, okay,
how many records did you walk out there with, Michael?
No, I'm gonna pick through
a lot, but nothing was like, I didn't walk out with anything crazy. It was like a bunch of living stereos, maybe a Mercury or 2, and like a bunch of like edition 3 Decas. Like it wasn't like
I got a bunch of postage stamp EMIs, like a big stack of those, and concert classic series EMIs.
And it was priced right. It was like everything was very reasonable.
He gave you a discount too. On top of
Well, what's the name of the shop? What's the name of the store? It's in LA.
Don't go there.
No, what is it called?
There's something Curiosity Emporium or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the one in Long Beach, San Pedro. No, that's fine. No, don't go to the record collector.
Don't go to the record collector. No.
The record collector.
It's an experience.
Well, but see here, there's 2 aspects. You probably, for the whole time since before I came, we're talking about listening and blah blah blah. I don't know how much you just talked about the actual digging and looking, and even the record collector. Every place,
Is this it?
Place,
that's it.
Yeah.
And the other, the thing that's really awful is he has this little Asian guy who he sends off to get everything, and he
no.
The time is he not there anymore?
No, the Asian guy wasn't there.
How is this organized? Like what is, like, if you were down this aisle, is this just alphabetical? What?
Well, we didn't go down that aisle because
it's usually by catalog numbers.
So basically, we stayed in the front area, but he had a gentleman who might have been 101, and he ordered him around, and I asked for a record that obviously was on the top shelf, and this old man was scaling the ladder.
That's a different guy.
I was just like this,
pretty good,
under him, thinking he was going to fall. Yeah.
So that store, that was frustrating because I went right for the British EMI Columbias, and that section was not organized, and so it was kind of maddening because it, like, time's ticking by, and of course you're every more minute you're there, the guy's like, "Are you going to buy something? Are you going to buy something?" And it wasn't organized, so I was just it was kind of a crapshoot, and I didn't know what he wanted for anything, and so it was like, I was pulling these records, but I didn't want to pull too many records because I probably wasn't going to buy everything. But then I went and looked at the Deca section, the London Deca section, and like all the Londons were done by catalog number, and it was like, well, I should have gone here. I should have started here.
Yeah.
I want to show this one to Rob at that place in San Pedro in the classical section. For some reason, I don't know why, I got this.
Oh, wonderful!
Oh no!
Oh man, that's great.
How much did he sell that?
Condition. I paid $4 for it.
How much?
$4.
Let's see that
Oh my
NYC on that
God.
label. Show the
Easily-
label.
That's easily a north of $200 record, right?
At
Yeah.
least.
And you never
Oh,
see
yeah.
it. And it was like, then I
Never.
had the thought maybe someone had like hid it in the classical section. You know what I mean?
Quite possible.
And like,
I've seen
look at
Moondog in classical.
Oh,
How long ago did you grab that there?
this is like a couple years ago.
Yeah,
oh man, that's amazing.
No.
that's crazy.
Hilarious, man.
You know, I mean, I'm good at finding records.
Uh-huh.
And other than that reissue, the Moondog I have is that 2017 reissue,
Mhm.
Columbia. But
It's
yeah,
not a record. It's not a record. It's not a vinyl. But there's a wonderful CD by the English pianist Joanna McGregor, who's really great. Not so well known. My cat's meowing at me. And she did a record with the Britten Sinfonia of a range of Moondog stuff, and it's absolutely wonderful. You
Awesome.
can stream it. It's called is it called Shadow Dances or something? I can't remember. But look it up, Joanna McGregor, and actually all her recordings are spectacular. She did Messiaen Bach, incredible.
now, Greg, first time we're talking, what genre would you categorize Moondog in? Because I always feel he's
We
most.
let Rob up. Now we're talking about jazz.
Okay.
Well,
so
no, but he did a whole like harpsichord record that I've
Yeah,
seen in
his stuff is
classical.
very cinematic.
So I don't know enough about him, but I've
Yeah.
seen him in the classical.
So when I
section.
just went over there to the shelf to get it out, you're gonna like this. So between the classical wall and the jazz wall, I have the avant-garde stuff, and it's just sort of the miscellaneous weirdos of the 20th century, and that's where Moondog lives.
Because right here, Jimmy Jufrey, I feel, has a lot of classical elements to his music.
Yeah.
So does very early Chico Hamilton stuff is very avant-garde in that way. So
Rob,
Yeah,
don't you remember when we sat at Michael's house and we blasted Black Sabbath and like Japanese death metal?
yeah.
I'm here to bring this
and
back.
Ravel,
Here to bring this
the
back.
Ravel record that Greg showed in his last video.
Hold on, everybody.
Yeah.
We-
No, I'm here to bring this back to classical music. Don't veer into jazz. And
Right? I mean, come on,
had
guys.
conversations
Thank you.
With Michael, I've been fortunate to hang out with Michael several times. And my early education, literally 50 years ago, last year, my first record store job was at the Warehouse record chain, where all their classical records were not by composer or conductor. They were in order by Schwann catalog number. And the thing is, I was a 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old, having to figure out from Schwann. For 2 years doing that, I learned, like if someone said, oh, Eugene Ormandy, okay, they're on Columbia. If you knew who was on Angel, what composer was Deutsche Grammophon, at least you kind of knew, even if you didn't hear everything. So that was my early education to classical records, vinyl records. So, and I thank Michael for furthering it somewhat, minimalistically, but somewhat, and critiquing my minimal.
You asked me to do that.
Of course I did.
I love that video. Can I
Yeah.
just
It was not
interject
impressed,
here
right?
that I've never met you, Mazzy. I'm a huge fan of your channel, and that was
right.
actually
his head is going to
no.
grow.
Okay, I know.
I'm
But
kidding.
I happened upon your channel by accident during the latter stages of the pandemic. That's how I discovered Michael's channel. It's how I discovered Michael Muller's channel. And Michael and I actually had lunch today, and he said hello to everyone.
I love him.
We were talking
Michael-
about his
Michael's
new
great.
He's
new
the
records
coolest
coming
guy.
out.
He's a wonderful,
And
Michael sent me a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
he's got a new
Well,
record.
hold on.
coming
I
out.
just want to interject. We all love Mazzy, but we also have a new person here, a local bandography.
Dave. That's Dave.
All
Hey,
right, hey
Mazzy.
Dave, how's it going? Sorry, I was
Dave.
getting nervous. I wasn't sure who you were.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
real. He's the real deal.
Okay, cool.
Well,
He was supposed to meet us in
I have
New
a
York,
record
but he
to
got
show you.
sick.
Welcome to the stream.
Hey, all right. So this,
Cool.
this.
Oh,
Michael
fabulous.
Wait, hey, I know that record. Mazzy knows that
He
record.
recommended this one to Mazzy as a starting record
Wow.
It's
in
great.
that video he did
What?
with Mazzy.
So
right?
Mazzy, you have the Angel, and as I said, if you like this record, you should try to find the EMI.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the EMI. This is
And
a
all
UK.
of
This
those-
is a UK. His master's voice.
Yeah. Is it just one of the records or is it the box set? No, it's just one. He did all of them. Those Ciccolini records are wonderful. And you can find them also on French EMI, which sound lovely, and they have a bigger gatefold and everything.
Ooh.
What are
now you got
French
me
EMI? Do French EMIs have a different name? Like their EMI?
No, they're
Ultimate
just
Series?
French EMIs. But so if you're wanting to buy,
They say French EMI on the label.
and they often have a
They
red.
smell like cheese.
They have
Well,
a red.
I have some French pressings. I have French.
Oh, really?
They're
Let's see
red. They have a red
Yeah, actually,
band
hold on.
around them.
Bam! This is a good story. Okay, this is a great story. Let me pull.
Oh no.
So I
Yeah,
found
go
out
ahead.
about these records because Electric Recording Company, which we don't have to
Yeah.
get into the whole debate with that, but this is I just want to kind of
Wonderful.
Yeah.
give my
Oh, wonderful.
yes,
Wonderful.
but I'm sure they're great, but their business model of
Oh no,
like-
I'm talking about the one that Greg's showing.
oh, I'm
Yeah, this
sorry.
is
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm
a really nice
ELC.
record, but I only have a
There
couple.
are.
Vox Day, San Martin.
It's tragic. It's just like
So anyway,
Uh,
so they put out a bunch of classical stuff, and because I respect their choices as just the consumer, not their business model. I'm not too happy about how they do like limited releases when I don't
and it
really
means all the people who really want them can't get them.
Yeah.
Don't.
So anyway, this was being released, so I went and found copies on a French EMI label of the same recording. So this is the Sonatas piano with violin, played by Lily Krauss with Willie Boskovsky, and this is a mono. So this is a mono box, but I found the exact same recordings on EMI reference series, a 2-box set,
Oh,
Mm.
oh my God!
and they're
you're-
wonderful.
Yes, those are benchmark recordings, gorgeous pressings.
Yeah.
I don't have them, but you're very lucky to have those. EMI had a whole bunch of French artists and pianists, and you want to go for the French releases because they're recorded in France. So, in theory,
And
likewise with the
There's
EMI, the German ones. Like, so for example,
Yeah.
if you want to get the Kemper box sets or recordings of the Richard Strauss tone poems with the Dresden Staatskapelle, which are again benchmark, go and get the German ones. They sound slightly better
German
than the
EMI.
EMIs.
These are EMI.
Yeah,
There's a number of EMI releases that were never originally on the British EMI. They were either French or German EMI, and some of them are quite good. Like one of them I know. I have a French EMI now. This was not originally
Classic.
Classic.
Now,
Yeah, I mean, you don't get Michael and I started on Archive. We feel that this is like this neglected treasure
aren't
trove.
these the ones I remember picking up a lot of these back in the 70s?
No,
there.
these are wonderful records.
they're good.
Because aren't they the ones that were on period instruments, right? Is that
Well, they're fascinating.
Some of them were.
some
Well,
of them?
it's fascinating because they're kind of this midway between old style, non-period, and new style period instruments, not fully period instruments. So Archive, it's this midway place where you're getting this first generation of period instrument performers, sometimes playing on old instruments, but old instruments playing vibrato, for example, when they shouldn't be some of the time, or they're playing on modern instruments, but it's with an appreciation of the new performing style. So they're actually
There's a debate
fascinating.
about the vibrato.
Oh, there's a huge debate about vibrato.
Yeah.
There's
Sorry,
always
everything
gonna
in early music is a debate, but that's
Yes.
where I think we're getting off track.
Absolutely, no. But I mean, I
no
love
one
these
debates
Archive
modern
records.
music at all.
But I would just love to interject quickly something here because you started to get into it about jazz and classical because you mentioned picking out a couple of records. I thought I knew we were going to have jazz guys here. So I wanted to pick out a couple of really interesting records, which you probably know. And these also have a personal story for me. But my introduction to jazz, when I was about 11, 12, my real introduction to jazz was I was in the record store and I saw this thing and I thought, ooh, that's a really cool cover. Can you see that? This was a record put out. This is the English pressing. This was of music influenced by jazz, written for Benny Goodman, that he then recorded. The American pressing of it looks like this. Meeting at the Summit.
Oh, I've seen that.
And these are wonderful recordings. The Stravinsky Ebony Concerto, Morgan Gould, Derivations, Copeland Clarinet Concerto. But my particular favorite, the Bernstein Prelude, Fugue and Riffs, which I have no hesitation in saying is, I think, one of the best pieces he ever wrote. And actually on the record, they added artificial reverb, but when they reissued it as part of the Bernstein Century on CD, they took that away. That's an amazing record. And that was how I got into jazz. And I also pull this because Michael's here. The great Glenn Miller and the Army Air Force Band.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I bought a whole bunch of these when I was a kid. This was one I just picked out. But I also wanted to mention one of my favorite jazz records, which kind of went into this whole area, because one of the things that the intersection of classical and jazz is not always a comfortable one. And you feel like the jazz people are trying to do something more than what they do, which is already great. They aspire to the classical, the big sort of design.
Yeah, but
And then
it used to be. It didn't necessarily always used to be that way. I mean, you look at a lot of the jazz greats, and a lot of them received a classical music education.
Absolutely. But I wanted to, this was an album that came out when I was in my teens. There used to be this incredible, oh yeah, there we go. But
There's
then
the ones I was trying to pull before.
Yeah, but you have to get the
Kurt
English ones. The Angels are horrible.
I know.
So there used to be this amazing radio program in England called Sounds Interesting every week, and he would come on and just talk about some record which was really interesting. And one day he talked about this record, which I'm assuming you jazz guys know about. Do you know about this? The Kaleidoscope of Rainbows, Neil Ardley. This came out on an imprint of Deca.
Oops, sorry.
No, there you go.
I've heard of Ardley, but I've not seen that record.
Well, you might want to check it out because he's really trying to marry formal composition with improvisation. And it's a roll call of some of the top jazz people at the time. And you'll also recognize names from rock. There's Paul Buckmaster, famous for the Elton John records on electric cello. Ian Carr, trumpet. Tony Coe on bass clarinet.
You sold me at Ian Carr.
No, it looks like
Barbara Thompson.
I'll post it in the chat. It looks like there's that it's available for like $25.
Really?
So this is the original pressing. I also have, there was a very good 2LP version done on it by, it's that label. It's not Speaker's Corner. It's the other people of Speaker's Corner. They do a lot of interesting jazz stuff. So you can get an audiophile version of this. He did this record and then he did another one.
Oh, are you talking about Pure Pleasure?
Yes, I think it's on Pure Pleasure.
Oh,
and then he did another album which has never been reissued called Harmony of the Spheres, likewise. And these are also fantastically recorded. I mean, it's vintage Deca.
Is that a headline? Is that a Deca headline?
No, it's not. It's a sub-label called Gal, but it's essentially a Deca. And beautifully recorded. And this, I think, one of the most successful marriages of classical, aspiring to like a more extended classical form with jazz.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Ian Carr is a great selling point there.
Music on Record. What's your name? What's your name? I'm sorry.
My name, Mark.
Mark. Okay. Mark, have you heard of this record right here?
No.
What do you mean? This is
John
Lewis,
of course. I worked with him in Boston. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is very jazz artist doing kind of classical. It's really
how interesting.
It's on Atlantic. I don't think it goes for a lot. Depends.
Oh, I'd love to track that down. I'm a huge Gunther Schuller fan.
Yeah.
Worked with him extensively when I was working for public radio.
Here's the pieces that they're doing.
Oh, that looks great.
Yeah.
Oh, so, but that's a John Lewis record, right? So
no. It's him producing it. So most of the artists
He
on
produced
here.
it. Okay.
Ornette Coleman's on here, Jim Hall.
Well,
Scott
I'm pretty sure he famously produced Ornette. He was the one who signed him to
Eric Dolphy's
got his
on this,
contract
but
to-
this is very
temporary.
classical. It's
Yeah.
a
I'm
great.
totally
if
going to
you
check
can
this
find
out.
album.
Thank you so much for showing it.
Who else
The
is
other
on
album-
that? Sorry,
Well,
Rob. Did you say who was on it?
So, Ornette Coleman, Jim Hall, Scott LaFaro, Eric Dolphy, Bill Evans, George Divier.
That's crazy.
But there's a string quartet on here. I mean, it's very classical. This is more classical than jazz, but it's
Well,
awesome.
in the 70s, the
I'll check it
classical
out.
labels, the American classical labels in the 70s were doing some crossover stuff to get sales. Like someone mentioned that Claude Bolling, the Rap Paul, Claude Bolling album.
Yes, and they're not always very good.
No, they're not. And then there was the San Francisco Symphony with the Siegel Schwall Blues Band.
Horror show.
Yeah.
I saw that live.
On the
I
other
saw
hand,
that
we got San Francisco.
I saw that
On the
live.
other hand, we got
I
San
love
Francisco
the
Symphony
Siegel
doing Metallica,
Schwall.
which is great.
Yeah,
I
I
love
have
the
that.
Siegel Schwall. The Siegel Schwall albums are wonderful, but that record, oh my god, yes.
I saw one of the shows of that at the time.
Oh,
Well, that
no.
was-
You know, some of these crossovers, like you never know. Even if you don't like them, you never know who they're going to reach. I mean,
But it
like,
brings
one of the-
people. It
Yeah.
brought young people
Yes.
into checking it out. It's kind of like
we just
like it's like the even on Angel Records, the Ravi Shankar, the East Meets West. You know, Ravi Shankar and
Absolutely.
what's his name, Yehudi Menuhin. You know, stuff.
Yeah.
on
Well,
Angel.
I mean, I left the orchestra, but one of the big things we were ramping up for with Tucson Symphony this season was like Tucson Symphony's doing just did a concert a couple weeks ago with Calexico, and like when we
would
do
love to
concerts
see
like
that.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then last year I played a concert with them, and we did a concert with, if anyone knows Orchestra Sergio Mendoza and the Orchestra Mendoza, we did a concert with them, and the people that show up to those are people that probably never been to a symphony concert before, and it's such a it's such a cool experience for them because they get to experience a side of music that they never have. So I love stuff like that, and
Well,
one
Michael,
of my favorite.
I went to a lot of San Francisco shows because being in San Francisco, a couple of my photographers did a lot of stuff for the symphony, the opera, and the ballet. So I would get tickets going back from Bloomstead to Ozawa to Michael Tilson Thomas. And I didn't go to a lot, but I saw, not just the crossover stuff. And then, of course, I had a connection because of Kronos Quartet, but that's the 20th century stuff, which is a whole different thing, I guess, for, classical standards, that whole
But I
avant-garde.
think you're raising a really important and good point, which goes back to something Mikey was saying right at the beginning about being a beginner. And I think often the way to get people hooked into classical music who've never been exposed is not to play them Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, all of that stuff.
But that's what got me into it.
Right, but actually, I mean, I took my daughter to see the Rite of Spring, and she was like blown away.
Yeah.
Or, some of this modern stuff, the Kronos Quartet, John Adams, Philip Glass.
But
this stuff,
For me, it was
in a
I
funny
agree.
way,
I
be
think
more accessible.
that translates to a jazz club too, because going to see live musicians, like, if you're not particularly into music, I feel like if you go, you can appreciate it. Like, it's undeniably, in many cases, like, a great experience. And I would imagine that's the same case for classical. So yeah, if you want to bring somebody in, I think that could definitely get them excited.
But for me, it was the introduction really for me, classical, big time, was Stanley Kubrick, because of 2001, that soundtrack, and then Clockwork Orange, and of course, switched on Bach in 68. I mean, Wendy Carlos, Walter Carlos, and all that.
Absolutely right. And when I wrote my recent review of the Hindemith box set in 2001, my first sentence was, who has brought in more people to classical music than anyone? Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How many people coming? And it's really out there music. Like in The Shining, you're going to start listening to Penderecki and Bartok. This is really cool stuff.
Roberto in the comments is joking, but seriously, I guess even before Stanley Kubrick, in 1965, the Beatles' Help had Prelude to Lohengrin Act 3. It had Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It had the Indian music, so I got into the sitar and stuff a little bit then. So these are the kind of things, as a young person, you start checking it out on the soundtracks, and it's like, wow, that Wagner stuff, da 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 da. I mean, wow. And then of course Apocalypse Now later with all the use of classical music, of course, in movies really kind of turns people onto it.
I can show you the thing that got me into classical music, Mike. I'm sending you a link in the chat. This is the recording that got me into classical music when I was a toddler, and it was a children's version of the Magic Flute that was in English with like skits in it. And I remember playing that. I had that on cassette. And I listened to it over and over and over again, and like the funny dragon voices and skits they would do intermixed with they were singing the actual arias in English, but they were singing the actual arias.
I mean, it's probably more enjoyable than the opera. The Magic Flute can be a bit of a slog. It's
I love the Magic. I love the Magic Flute.
I know, but I'm being a bit facetious. It's a kind of ridiculous story, but anyway. I love opera, so don't get me wrong.
There used to be a great jazz record store in San Francisco called the Magic Flute, right by Kezar Stadium, and it was in the 70s, like the great jazz record store. So.
Mike, when I joined in, were you guys talking about Moondog?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob, you were talking about Moondog, right? The first
no,
time I
think
walked into the new Amoeba.
Greg showed a Moondog record.
Right,
Yeah.
and we were talking about Moondog.
Okay, yeah, I missed. I was trying to figure out how to log on, but Rob, the first time I ever walked into Amoeba, the new location, they had a Moondog original on the wall, mint, the one with the art cover. I'm trying to think who did the artwork.
Is it on Prestige?
Yeah. It's the one with all the writing, all the words on the cover.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the artist. The artist was
how much were they?
Big artist from New York that hung out at Max's Kansas City.
Not Warhol. No.
Yeah, it's a Warhol cover.
Yeah. So
they wanted $3,000.
Yeah.
Ooh,
makes sense.
It was $3,000 even. I walk in there, I start looking on the walls, and this is like the first thing that popped out. I was like, oh boy,
I think Dr. Robert bought it.
Normally, they have a case where they'll put those in there, because I haven't really seen records for $3,000 on the wall.
It was on a pillar, one of the wall pillars.
Yeah.
Wow. Pretty high. The guy has to come out. The lackey has to come out of the back with the big long stick.
Yeah. But mostly those are maybe 500 and under. They have a case where they put like the very high end.
Is this it?
There we go.
Yeah, they had that. They wanted three. They wanted three large.
Beautiful.
Or 3 bill or however you call it.
Well, there's one. What state is the one for sale on this?
Last title in the 7000 series, 7099.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
It's a beautiful.
We say this isn't a jazz stream, but hey, Prestige, put out a Moondog box.
Wait. Okay, so if this is the classical stream where the classical bigwigs are listening, somebody, for the love of God, reissue the early Columbia titles, the UK Columbia titles.
Yeah.
Someone, please. It's not ERC.
That guy who just said that can have you shot.
And I want flip back jackets. I want the full treatment.
Michael, we should just put them out ourselves.
Yeah.
There's really,
I've looked into it. I know what it would cost.
That's a good investment.
Don't but here's the thing: don't ERC own the rights to most of those titles?
I don't know.
They were negotiating a specific deal for the small number of records. But it's absolutely, Deutsche Grammophon is now showing, this is the first time that the label itself did something like this. And it's showing the way. Deca, EMI, have you any idea how much money you could be making just by doing straightforward AAA?
I just hope they don't do a big gatefold. I'd rather, if you want to put photos in, just put it in.
Do the original.
Give me a nice flip back.
Don't do a limited edition. Don't do a limited
The original covers
You're not ordering a pizza.
Are great.
The original covers are beautiful, and I think that actually like the especially the early Columbias, part of the appeal of the early Columbias, the recordings, some of the recordings are nice. They're not amazing. They're nice. But part of the appeal is how beautiful the covers are, the jackets, the labels. It was really done with someone who had an eye for design did those 50s and 60s Columbias.
Absolutely. And they really are lovely records. Yeah, well, you've got a Klemperer there, I can see.
Mike, can you show
If
us?
I could just nerd out, one of the fun things about collecting these old ones are like they have the Columbia logo here. Sometimes it's like sky blue. It's huge. That looks awesome. So I also like the bar at the top here and flip back jacket. So it's great, nice and glossy.
Oh, that's an original. Is it the Magic?
It's not no. It's a half moon.
Oh, right. Okay. That's the Magic.
Those
are great.
Yeah. No, I don't mind. I don't honestly. I don't mind any of those early.
No,
like, it can be a third
still,
pressing postage stamp, and I'm fine.
No, those are still. But
I'd rather get that than not get it.
You know, the difference between the silver one, the silver labels, and the Magic Note, which is what that's called, is none. It's just that they're both tune
silver
masters.
labels.
That's the key thing.
No, the difference is in the price because people
price
want
is
that
enormous.
silver label.
Yeah. Sometimes
I've never
seen
seen
the second editions sound better than the silver and blue.
They're on quieter vinyl.
They're on quieter vinyl.
Hold on.
That's it.
So this what we're talking about
better.
is I'm just going to interrupt for a second because we use this for our intro. So if you saw the intro, obviously I might.
It's a beautiful label. It's the best label design of any classical label that it's ever existed.
Agreed.
I missed the beginning.
And I wish I had a bunch of these to show right now, but all my records are on a truck going through Utah.
What are we? We're talking about early Columbias.
Yeah.
Oh God! I'll go and pick out a few.
Okay, go, and I'll show this in the meantime.
Where
so
are you
this
now,
is
Michael, in Colorado?
Yeah, so I'm in Colorado Springs, but all my stuff is on a truck somewhere between LA and Colorado Springs.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to show this is a Testament reissue with this is obviously not an original stamp. Those look much nicer. Do they have a deep Michael? Do they have a deep groove?
60 miles per hour to explode?
No, the
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a nice label.
No, the Columbias never did the Columbias and EMIs didn't really do groove pressings. It's just, and those are all a feature of the pressing plants they were pressed at usually.
I mean, Michael, here's a good question for you. And anyone else can chime in. Who currently makes the best pressed current classical albums?
What are you talking about reissues?
Well, anything. There's got to be modern classical albums coming out.
Oh yeah, I can answer that. Yarlung Records.
Yarlung.
Greg, you agree with that?
Yarlung, yeah. Testament
Bob Etia knows what he's doing.
What?
Sorry, what was that?
Testaments can be good.
Yeah, I mean, so if we're talking about music that was recorded like in the last 20 years, I mean, Yarlung is by far they're the only ones recording new artists, like people playing groups that are playing now.
Were those the records? I remember someone sent them to you to listen to.
Yeah, I was sent. Well, no, I was sent one or two for review for back then Analog Planet, and then Bob Etia sent me a couple more just to have, because he liked the reviews. But no, yeah, like that's a guy in LA who's doing small scale chamber recordings, doing all analog chamber recordings, which is really cool. And he's tapped into the classical scene in LA, so he knows who is like our young up and coming artists, and he goes out of his way to record them. He does a lot of the recordings at Colburn, actually, like the concert halls at Colburn.
Oh, you're talking about Yarlung, yeah,
Yarlung.
So they're wonderful label, and all their equipment is designed and built by the guy I've bought all my equipment from for years. Yeah, I mean, gorgeous.
Question here: What about Sony's coming from record industry? I guess this is a source. I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Oh my God, Greg.
Oh,
stop.
beautiful!
What a great cover.
Were these all the ones you got at Blind Dog?
Yeah.
These are. Hey everyone, this is classical porn.
Because there's
still why does it have an epic? Why does it have an epic?
It looks like a beautiful shape.
And here's like
some
second edition ones that sound.
Yeah, those are that's the second label. That's what I buy mostly because the silvers are so expensive.
Yeah, like here's a second label one.
Yeah, I just
it has the price tag on it. So the second label one's $30.
Yeah.
It's like they're
That's
not,
one of the better. Great.
just-
I mean, Mark has listened to that record at my house. That's one of the better ones.
Oh, and I bought a
love that
copy.
recording, man. I love that one.
So 2 of the best sounding records in my collection. This one, and I don't have the records separately. This is Milstein, doing the violin concerto.
I think, aren't they reissuing that, or hasn't that been reissued?
And there you see the blue label that you were talking about earlier in the top left-hand corner.
Yep.
And then this one of these is a magic note. One of them is a blue label. I mean, this is just divine. It's a completely different sound to the Decas because it's more mid-ball.
Mama's bar mitzvah with Nate.
But then look, here's a bunch more. Like I love the Giolini's.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Look at that label.
Yeah.
That looks.
There you
That
go,
cover
Mike.
looks
Giolini
awesome.
is I like pretty much everything he's recorded.
Oops,
Yeah.
there we go. Well, I knew someone in the LA Phil, a violinist, and he said playing under Giolini was like unlike anything else. He said it was an extraordinary experience.
When you're into the whole classical thing like you are, I mean, is that the thing? You don't say the LA Philharmonic, you say, hey, the LA Phil. You're on a first name.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah.
We do.
Is that it? Okay.
It's like calling,
love that. It's like-
calling John Coltrane train.
Here we go.
I only have one. I think I'm pretty sure this is
never heard that
originally
one.
Columbia.
Here we go. I mean, just look
Uh-huh.
at this stuff. I love this gold label. Whoops, you see on here that you always get this little sticker on.
Wait, that's a Columbia? That was Columbia?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I got all these so many years ago. Before even then they were starting to get crazy. But yeah, I mean
And then the gold
Brahms
label too.
series.
Yeah, same. This gold label goes for the first HMV too.
These are 2 of my favorite.
So they
Yeah,
have
those are
some-
lovely.
And that's stereo or is that mono?
Stereo. Always
Okay.
stereo with the gold label.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's
If
the gold
these are my
label designate?
2 of my favorite Klemperers here. This one with the Metamorphosis and Deaf and
that's a good one.
Transfiguration.
Don't do it.
And
Rob.
then this one, oh God, and I love the cover of this. If you don't have this, Michael, you need to get this. Greg, you need to
I
get this
didn't
one.
know that record
I
existed.
don't have that.
Klemperer doing Kurt Weill
Yes,
Yeah,
That
that's crazy,
exists?
yes.
and that cover. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up and buy that tonight.
Yeah, it's fabulous, and it's his own composition, the Merry Waltz. I
What
think.
year did that? What year was that recorded? Do you know?
Is that like 62
This
or
is
something?
1962.
Bam!
Look
That's
at that.
before the door. That's before the Doors covered Kurt Weill.
No, this is
Alabama song.
and of course Klemperer. As I recall, Klemperer worked with Weill, didn't he? I think he worked with him. I think he worked with him in Weimar, Germany. I'm pretty sure. And there's a final.
You call him Klemp? Is that?
Sorry, hold on. Can you show that again?
When I was a kid,
Okay.
because in England again, they did this kind of shit. They broadcast Klemperer conducting live the Beethoven symphonies, and he was so old and decrepit. He sat there like this, and it was off-putting, and I couldn't listen to Klemperer recordings for years. And now he's like one of my favorites.
Back in like what I'm going to call the golden era of like recording. So we're talking about all those Chicago symphonies with Reiner, these Klemperers, the whatever. Like, did they stick to their label or did they jump around? Like, would you have a U.S. musician go out and record with like a UK label and vice versa? Or would they?
Deca and RCA had a relationship, and if I get this wrong, Michael, do step in. So there are some RCA living stereos which are also Decas and vice versa.
Well, so
that
what it was
happened.
is RCA contracted with Deca to go record some artists in Europe, and so the Deca team recorded some of these RCA living stereos, and then eventually the license reverted back to Deca's, which is why you have things like the Reiner, like for instance the Reiner Verdi Requiem that was originally an RCA Soraya series box, but it was recorded by the Deca team. Eventually, that license fell back to Deca, and Deca issued it on Deca.
Right. But in general, they stuck with their company. So Klemperer was with EMI forever.
And it was usually by Conductor.
Started with Karajan started with EMI, then went to Deutsche. Well, he started
Deutsche
actually with EMI and Deca, and his early.
And those are the best.
record-
Those are the best Karajans.
My God! If you want to find a great record, the
Which are the
Deca
best
Karajan, Deca Karajan Dvorak Symphony 8. Oh my God! Just stunning.
Oh yeah, I've been meaning to get that. I know
Are those,
that, yeah.
are those early
Stunning.
50s? Are those early?
No,
50s?
those are they're late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
And then
Deutsche
he.
Grammophone- well, didn't
then
Deutsche
It's
Grammophone-
it's
Deutsche
amazing
Grammophone-
how many recordings were done in this little short window of time.
And they sound
Didn't he
amazing.
do that Beethoven box, that first one in 62? Isn't that
63 for Deutsche Grammophone, but he'd actually already done the 9 symphonies for EMI with Walter Legg and the Philharmonia. See, Walter Legg was this impresario at EMI, and he was determined to bring all these great European maestros to London to record with this new orchestra he had created, the Philharmonia. And at that time, they really were probably the best orchestra in Europe, because unlike all the orchestras in mainland Europe that had been destroyed by the Second World War, these guys had not been destroyed, and there was money of a record company behind it. So he recruited Giolini, Karajan, Klemperer. And then Karajan eventually, I mean, his ambition was to be the conductor for life with the Berlin Phil. So he went to them, but he maintained his contract with EMI and Deca, so did occasional records for them. And of the later Karajan records, the 2 Puccini operas he recorded, La Bohème and Madame Butterfly, are just.
And didn't
Sorry, I just
Wait,
wanna-
everyone, we got a
hold on.
dono. We got a dono. Come on.
We do have it. We have a dono, so we're gonna honor it. So Roberto's asking, in classical, should I start focusing on what critics think is the best interpretation of a piece? So let's start. We'll go around the horn. We'll start with Greg, then we'll go Michael, and then we'll go Mark. So, Greg, what do you think about this approach?
I mean, to get critical review of the era that we're talking about, you mostly have to go way back to those critics. I always really like the Arthur Salvatore list. I mean, I'm sure that's controversial in itself.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from just his breakdown of those lists and just picking through this like years ago. And I think if you were going to listen to a critic or a list or something, that's a really good place to start.
Cool. Michael?
It depends. I mean, every critic list you're gonna look, like if you just Google best recordings of blah blah blah, you're gonna get
That's what I do.
You're gonna get various lists compiled by critics, and the lists can vary incredibly. So it can be kind of hard to wade through that. But like, you know, there are some recordings that just, you know, are just spoken about with a kind of reverence. Like, for instance, I can think like, just in music school growing up, everyone loves the Bernstein Shostakovich 5 recording. It is like one of those recordings that just like everyone talks about, because it's not, is it maybe the absolute best Shostakovich recording of all time? Maybe not, but it's like, it is a kind of it's like a pinpoint on like a timeline of recorded music history. Like everyone at least knows that recording is a reference. So it's a good, like, there are those kind of recordings that are like, I would call landmarks. I think those can be.
One question that came up today. So we have a Discord, and we have a classical focus channel. One of the questions was, I want to get a Beethoven cycle box.
I brought one because
which one should I get?
I mean, I'm not going to die on the mountain of this choice. But if you were going to get them all in
Sorry,
one
Mark.
That's a Klemperer. Yeah, this is Klemperer. Looks like this on the side. This is really great.
It is.
Yeah.
It is really great. It is completely at odds with the way you'll hear Beethoven now, which is generally faster. And there's nothing the hell wrong with that.
No.
It's a complicated question. First of all, you have to think about, okay, is your priority the performance or the sound? If it's really important for you to have great sound, then you need to focus in on certain labels. You want to go for RCA Living Stereos, just peruse through the catalog of reissues that are in stock from AP, and go with
Rob,
those. They're all
do you have a Beethoven
performances.
box, Rob? Go get a Beethoven box.
No, I actually do have Beethoven stuff, but but I have records to show.
He's got some records.
But I was going to say to Roberta, you should watch Bill and Ted, the first Bill and Ted, because the Beethoven's in it, or see the dog movie. No, I'm just joking.
I did get a reissue.
I don't know if I would recommend.
I know this one. I think there's another one that people prefer, but this was a reissue I got, and it was fun.
That's that's the one that's generally preferred. He recorded the full cycle 4 times.
Okay.
But the 63, and you can find a really nice large tulip pressing of that for around, certainly under 100 for $50. Not so much.
Yeah,
So
I think it has a slightly different.
I think that one's pretty good.
I have a question. So I found a bunch of these mono versions of Living Stereo. What is your opinion of them?
Well, it's mono of RCA. It's not Living Stereo.
Well, no. Well,
but yes.
These are
they're living mono.
I wouldn't bother. I love mono, but I wouldn't bother with records that are done specifically in good stereo sound. Yeah.
Now, can we talk about this a little bit? Because this was like shocking to me, because when I would seek out a record that I knew was expensive, I'd like, oh, I could find the mono one for like $5. And I was getting those, and I got like I got some really nice records from those. But because the thing is, in the collecting world of jazz, there's difference between mono and stereo, but I am okay with having either of them. It really doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to not get a record that I want to get because
I'm throwing these in the trash, by the way,
for the most part. So anyway, so the thing is, what's up with classical? Like, I feel like it's strictly like stereo is stereo. And
we want the sound stage. You want the width in the recording.
I can appreciate that.
So you can get all the instruments.
So, oh God, this is so that is I would say to anyone
I can recommend. Wait. I want to talk to the peanut gallery real quick. I think that, like, so, you know, there's so much, like, Beethoven's one of the most recorded artists in history, and there's a ton of great individual recordings, and there's a ton of great cycles. But two I can just recommend that are easy is, like, if you're a Beethoven newbie, 2 in-print records that you should check out is, one is the original source, Beethoven 7, fantastic recording, great sound. It's in print. You can go buy it right now. And the other is, I think it's still in print, is the Bruno Walter Beethoven 6 on Analog Productions with the Columbia Symphony. It's one of the best recordings of that piece. It's in the best sound you can possibly get for that recording. And you can go buy it on Acoustic Sounds right now, I think.
I couldn't agree more.
I know you
now, Mazzy. You're
I know you classical snobs aren't quite into this. I think I like this because this is the first one I got literally.
No, it's fabulous.
50 years ago.
It's fabulous.
That's the same one I have.
And then I got the re-recording, which I don't like as much, but I had these like CD period.
No, it's not.
Then I have this one, which I don't know anything about it, but I got it during the CD heyday at Tower, the classical store in San Francisco.
So that's Barenboim.
Okay, I'll send this to Rob. That's fine.
Well, you know, the whole story about Barenboim was he
there you go, Greg.
There you go.
Yeah, it's glorious, but it's going to be challenged by the new original source coming out of Böhm's Pastoral, which I've heard in its SACD version, and it's absolutely glorious.
I think what you don't like about this guy, I think he hung around the grotto at Heft's place too much. That's why you don't like this guy.
Look, I'm a Barenboim fan, but there's a great story recounted in Richard Osborne's biography of Carrie. And if anyone wants to find out what a conductor does and learn about the history, learn something about how the classical music industry works and how conductors work, how it all works.
Well, hold on. I have a question about a conductor. So, Greg, you showed a Bruno Walter. I don't have any of his stuff, and whenever I find it, it's like always mono. Like, I feel like maybe he was old enough that he recorded mono and not.
Well, yeah. By the time you get to what we consider like the golden era of recording, you know, that like late 50s, early 60s when stereo's coming out, most of these guys had been recording music since the 30s or the 20s, even. You know, so it's like we're catching them at the very tail end.
Yeah, I mean, he knew
of their careers. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Bruno Walter knew Mahler. I think he may have conducted first performance of at least one or two of the symphonies.
I have a
These
question
are the
for Mark.
same. I assume these are the same ones from the box. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you could, but what you can do with the box, all
Yeah.
the single ones, you want to track down the large tulip pressings, the early pressings. They really do sound better.
Yeah.
Or if you've got the money,
I think those are.
Corner did a
I've been to
reissue.
Mazzy's place. I think those are the tulips. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
So with those,
yeah,
That one is not.
all
it's
the
a very
D,
good
all the
start
DG,
cycle.
all the DG that came to the United States was pressed in Germany.
Yes.
Early on, and then they started pressing some in Italy.
You
Okay.
want to always
never
with DG, you
locally.
always want to get made in Germany pressings, always.
Okay.
I have a question
but-
for Mark, real quick.
Sure.
You were talking about Columbia specifically for a minute. I have this record I was just gifted from Chris Cole, and it's Robert Kraft conducting the Columbia Symphony Orchestra. Music
Yeah.
Edgar Varese, Volume 2.
Is it stereo or mono?
It's stereo, 360 sound.
Oh,
Columbia
that might be.
Masterworks.
Can you look at it? Is it got 2 eyes or 6 eyes?
I want to say these are, because he sent
Or
me
is it
2 of these. And I want to say they're.
Or is it the later
this
label?
one's
Oh,
a
I know
2-eye.
that sleeve. Yeah, it's a.
Yeah, there we go. The 2 eyes, which I think are actually often a really good deal. They're often.
Yeah, because they're always dollar bin records.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're often. Don't you find they're often quieter than the 6 eyes? And they're still tube mastered.
Maybe, I don't know. I recently sold
But
pretty
where's
much all my.
that band? Is that a
Okay, so
the
Robert Kraft
Columbia Symphony
worked
Orchestra,
very
where are they
closely
based?
with Stravinsky, and he has an amazing catalog on Columbia of both Stravinsky's works, and then, God, he recorded both modern stuff like Schoenberg and stuff, and then he did like Renaissance stuff. And Sony just came out with a box set of all his stuff, which is on my absolute to buy list because their remasterings are superb. Once you get these CDs, you don't need to even bother with the vinyls anymore.
To answer your question,
you got session,
the Columbia.
Mazzy, you have session photos.
Well,
Let's take a look at the
to,
photos.
to answer your question, the Columbia Symphony was the name of a pickup group. Well, it was a contract group basically, and some of the Columbia Symphony recordings are basically the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and some of them are basically the New York Philharmonic. It depends on where they were recorded.
And they
but,
recorded
the U.S. Yeah, that's what I was interested to know.
And they recorded here in LA, and I believe one of the places they recorded was a hall on the Veterans Administration, which is just down the street from where I live.
Oh, really?
I think I remember Michael Fremer wrote an article about that to do with the Bruno Walter Columbia Symphony recordings.
Quite possibly. And I actually think and Michael did, when he was at his previous endeavor, as he says, he did a lovely video about the 9 symphonies, which got a huge amount of attention. And one of the sets he featured was the Bruno Walter set, which if you get one of the earlier ones, it comes in a beautiful big thing with this really great period book. And you can either get a 6-eye or a 2-eye, and they're lovely performances. But yeah, they were basically a scratch band.
Yeah, but Bruno Walter was one of the best conductors of the early 20th century. And
Mozart.
Earlier this year, I sold to a friend. I sold it one set. I sold pretty much all my non-6-eye Columbia pressings. Because most of them are available digital for the most part, better sounding than the vinyl. But the ones I kept all my Bruno Walters because I just couldn't get rid of them.
Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? What you just showed up? Can you show that again?
In the original sleeve,
such a thing
yeah.
beautiful.
In the bag, yeah.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a bag with that Columbia logo on it like that before. It's usually a blank bag.
Yeah, it's another Varese.
Is that one?
Oh, that's a fabulous record.
Sorry, I knew I'd pronounce it.
No, this is a fabulous record. Fabulous record.
I think I have that.
It's Robert Kraft.
Yes, and I think it has. Does it have a poem electronique on it, which is one of the first pieces of electronic music played at the World's Fair?
It does.
Put that on. I love Varese. I think, and actually, a great Varese record is the one done by Pierre Boulez. I love Pierre Boulez, and unfortunately, he was recording for Columbia when the vinyl was like shit. Pardon my French, but there's an amazing box set of all
like
his Columbia recordings.
71, 72.
Yeah, and it's a fabulous set. And his recording, he redid it for Deutsche Grammophon, but he did a recording of the Rares of Amerique, which will take the roof off. And what I wanted to say about him, look for, this is a controversial area, but Columbia did a series of half-speed mastered records. They did a bunch of the popular catalog, things like Wish You Were Here, and you want to get the second pressing of that, not the earlier pressing. But they did some of the Boulet's records, and they are sensational.
Wow.
There's Firebird, there's which was recently selected as the best recording by Gramophone of Firebird, and it is sensational. And it gives the famous Dorati Mercury a run for its money in that half-speed version. They did half-speed versions of the Walter Carlos electronic, the Brandenburgs, and a couple of other Boulets, I think the Rite of Spring and the Concerto for Orchestra. If you don't want to go that route, there's a wonderful English company called Dutton who are doing amazing CD, SACD remasterings of that CBS Sony catalog, those quadraphonic records, and they're remastered both stereo and surround sound, and it includes those Boulez records, and they sound great. But look, anyone who's hunting for good CBS stuff, look for those half-speed masters, and they'll show up in the bins for like $20.
I know,
and they sound amazing. The Firebird, oh my God.
Michael dislikes this performance, but I just
Which one is that?
I like it because of the cover, so I'm very superficial.
Wait, I don't know what I'm disliking right now.
But this one.
I don't dislike the performance. It's not the one I reached for.
But I love this cover.
Well, don't you dress up like that for
Everyone
Halloween?
you have to have the Stravinsky recordings. Again, there's a wonderful
superficial.
CD box set.
You have to have which one?
Yeah.
You have to have the Stravinsky conducting
Yeah,
Stravinsky.
they're landmark recordings.
I mean, the cover alone.
But if you want to listen to like the Rite of Spring, like rip ass, like that's not the one you grab.
I like a good kick-ass Rite of Spring. So
I mean, supposedly
there's only 500 versions.
What? Yeah.
It's one of the most recorded pieces in music. It's got tough competition.
I want to show a few more records to redeem myself from those monos before I leave.
Cool. Yeah, go ahead.
I need to. Also, we're gonna close the stream in like 10 minutes or so because
I brought after Rob goes. I brought a show and tell that's like kind of unique. So after Rob goes, I'd love to show that.
Very quickly, because we didn't. Can I just very quickly say on the mono issue? It's not a question of no monos at all. But so earlier classical stuff, which was recorded in mono, some of the early Deutsche Grammophones, Decas in particular, they are lovely. They're lovely. But I don't feel any better.
I don't feel any better by you saying that. So.
Okay, sorry.
But, so I found an OG of this. I showed it to Michael. He asked why I didn't buy it. I have this classic records version of this.
Yeah. I love the classic versions, I have to say. They have an energy in them.
Yeah, these are Bernie Grumman mastered.
Yeah, I love those. Apart from the very earliest ones, I love them.
I have this. You don't like this one?
I don't know about that. I actually heard Rubinstein play.
That's the one that has like a book in it, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna throw this away.
I heard Rubinstein play when I was about 14. I sat on the stage about 20 feet away from him and watched his hands, and he was extraordinary. Yeah, that's a good record.
I mean, one thing I can say from a musician standpoint is that just like anything Heifetz is great. It doesn't matter what the record. It doesn't matter if it was recorded on a wax cylinder. It's Heifetz. It's like violin players, like that's like the 13-year-old kid that's like studying violin, like he's listening to Heifetz on his iPod. Like,
yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more.
I love that record. I love the ring highlights from Schulte.
Wagner.
And this is a US one, right?
As long as it's made in UK, you're all right.
Yeah, that's
if it says made in England, you're fine. That's the rule. Always made in England.
And I've been, here's one I'm just going to show that I guess every year in the 70s, Santa Monica High School did these.
Oh my God.
Did these. They did these things that they would bring in. I just sold one of these for $200 because they bring in like big named guys. This guy was a TV and movie score guy, but these are very sought after records. They would do them every year. These Stairways records.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, I gotta. Oh, where'd my internet go?
Hold on.
Can you guys hear me?
Michael's got something to share.
I see you.
We hear you.
Yeah, I do, but my Wi-Fi sucks right now.
You're fine here.
No, we're seeing you and hearing you fine.
Yeah, your nose looks 2 times the normal
everything's
size.
like spinning and oh yeah, that's, you know what, Rob, I can't tolerate your anti-Semitism tonight.
You're not even doing.
You guys are still frozen on my end. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
We hear you perfectly.
Yeah.
You're moving and speaking and everything.
All right. We're just gonna go ahead. So, like a couple weeks ago, I went record hunting in the area around me, and I went to Wax Tracks in Denver, and I found a few good records there. I found a couple old Shaded Dogs. I found a couple EMIs, but the coolest record I thought I found was this record by, back then, a little-known composer, although she's getting a lot of recognition, is there's this record by the composer Lily Boulanger.
Oh.
And I know Mark
With
knows
Markovich,
Lily Boulanger.
my
Greg, do you
God.
know Lily Boulanger?
No.
Sister of.
So Lily Boulanger is probably more famous, at least when I was in music school, Lily Boulanger was more famous due to her sister, Nadia Boulanger. And even Mazzy knows people in the realm of Nadia Boulanger because Nadia Boulanger taught some of the most acclaimed composers of the 20th century.
Even Mazzy.
I mean, she taught Elliott Carter. Well, because Mazzy knows who Aaron Copland is, and Nadia Boulanger was Aaron Copland's composition teacher.
Warren Zevon was a disciple of Aaron Copland.
But she taught some non-classical.
She taught Philip Glass.
Yep,
she even taught lessons to Quincy Jones.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Astor Piazzolla, Virgil Thompson. So Nadia Boulanger was this huge pedagogue, but she had a younger sister named Lily Boulanger who was incredibly talented as a composer. Yeah. And she unfortunately had a lot of health problems from a young age. She had intestinal tuberculosis. She had bronchial pneumonia. She died at age 24. And she was composing right up until the end. She had an opera she was working on that she never finished. But this is a rare instance of, and like her stuff was performed a lot in the early 20th century, and then it kind of fell into obscurity. And now I think it is a side effect of the push for like discovering female composers. Her work is getting rediscovered, but her work was originally like heralded back in her day. But this is a rare example. This is like one of the few examples of her serious music on vinyl that exists.
I've never
this is
seen
a recording
that.
that was done with the Monte Carlo Symphony for Markovich.
And it's Markovich.
And this is an American.
Yeah.
And you sure you found it for a good price?
This is an American pressing on Varese Sarabande, and there's some interesting stuff on the back. $4.
Yeah. No, that's a real find.
There's an interesting stuff on the back about this recording, and it says these performances were recorded stereophonically in May and June of 1977 in Monte Carlo by Concert Hall Records. David Josefitz, executive producer. These recordings were issued in Europe in 1978 on the Concert Hall label, but it was in a different order, and they reordered it for this recording. And also the mastering on that European issue, it was apparently they didn't like it. The master tape was recorded without Dolby noise reduction, and because of some noticeable background tape hiss, the highs were rather drastically filtered on the European issues. Once cut, however, the lost treble and transparency cannot be effectively restored with tone controls. For this release, therefore, Perez Sarabon has mastered for a wider sonic range. The highs can, of course, be reduced if desired. So it might.
So
be
they
a little
went
bright,
against
but...
the intention of the artist. God, isn't Fremer and Malachi against that at the moment?
All right,
No,
guys.
that's an
Mazzy, you're gonna get us.
All right, hold on. let's not get anybody in trouble. So we've been going now for 2.5 hours. Thank you for everyone who's joined.
Before we go, I want to give a link, and maybe you can share it. There's a wonderful, if you want to get more into classical music, one of the best YouTube channels you can watch out there is this YouTube channel called Inside the Score. He's this guy that does little short video essays on individual composers, like why this composer is cool. And he did a little 17-minute video on Lily Boulanger and her music. This piece on this record, this piece won her the Prix de Rome Prize, which is the most prestigious composition prize in classical music, and she was the first woman to win it.
Very cool.
So it's
Mike,
cool music.
Share that? Can you share that link?
Yeah, let me share the link in the. I'll share it in the private chat, and you can put it out there.
Okay.
But there's a video on this of like why music's greatest loss. Why listen to Lily Boulanger?
No.
Fantastic! What a discovery! That's wonderful.
Great.
This was great. This wasn't as pretentious as I thought it might be. It was nice. It was a nice conversation. No, I mean that it's good for other people because a lot of us, I know what I know, and a lot I don't know, and I really appreciate it, for me at least. But I'm sure a lot of other people, and Mike too, right? So
yeah. Well, my favorite part was, honestly, I wanted to make sure that I was able to pick everybody's brain. You guys have a depth of knowledge that it's great to tap into. And I really, but even that said, I felt like when everybody was showing records and using that as like the jump off points, although I know obviously the recordings are greater than just records, but from my perspective, that was really fun. So I think that kind of might be a good way to move forward with the future live streams, is kind of anchor it in some physical media that we can show, talk about it, and then just kind of do what we did. I feel like I'm really grateful for the chat, and like Mazzy, you showed up unplanned. You have great stuff to show. Rob, you showed some cool stuff.
It's good to have people to ground us, because you get me, Greg, and Mark in a live stream, and we can just kind of.
I'm leaving here sad because I have shitty mono recordings.
Oh no!
People in the chat said don't throw them away.
If you like them, that's all that matters. Seriously.
Exactly.
It's
but
is it the music, stupid?
It is. You can guide us to
stereo.
And classical music is a snobbery. It's a snobbery zone.
Especially
I have
when
to say, sometimes
especially
being unaware of the general field, and when you guys start talking about people, I can like drift off because I'm not totally aware of everything. So it's my job on the panel, I think, to try to ask questions and kind of represent kind of the newcomer. So I'm going to try to do that. So if you fall too far askew, I'm going to jump in and redirect because I feel like
that's kind of what classical. That's kind of what the records and the vinyl and the classical recordings are really cool for, because like when I was coming up as a music student, I knew current orchestras, I knew current conductors, I knew all that stuff. And then like one day I was like, digging classical records, and some guy was talking to me about Otto Klemperer, and I was like, I don't know who that is, because I didn't grow up with this stuff, but I rediscovered it through this hobby.
This is one of the things I think it's really important to say, and we haven't said it, but certainly for me, one of the things I love about records, and I've always loved it, first of all, I think you have to think about them very differently from live music. They have their own art form. They have their own thing. And one of the joys of going back into these catalogs is that classical music did not sound all the same like it does today, 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. When you go into these older catalogs, you're hearing orchestras that sound completely different. You hear a way of performance that's completely different. And it all brings a new bearing on this extraordinary music.
Well, I think that's like some 101 stuff that I feel like I'm aware of, like there's like one hall in London where like the underground goes through, and sometimes you could hear it on certain. It's like whatever, like, but like I don't. But it's just like that type of stuff. I feel like is fun, kind of banter to like talk through and talk about recordings around there, and like some of the I don't know. I just feel like those are the things that are sucking me in, which I think is why when we started showing records, like as the collector in me, like I love to see like these things, and
like
they're really fun.
I need to see more of Greg's records because he's showing amazing stuff tonight, and
yeah, Greg's showing like
he sent me
right now.
Greg sent me
Michael,
like a
when
dozen.
you get your collection, and then Mark's got insane stuff. I know.
Greg sent me a dozen
Mark,
records.
I've watched you before, so.
Oh, thanks. I just haven't done a video for a while. I just have no time. But...
Well, there was one you did.
We thought Alistair
McCook
was going to be here, but
oh.
So, Greg, what are your thoughts on the first live stream here?
I thought it was great. I think we should do it again. Do it like once a month or something, you know, throw it out there.
Really fun.
And I like what you're saying too, like bounce off of it with records, because yeah, it's like, for me, it's super fascinating. Like I would just listen to Mark talk like all day long, you know what I mean? But it's like,
me too. I
records, you know, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I got a bunch of records to show, so I mean, I got.
You showed some really great ones.
Save them for next time. I really do have to shut it down. I got to take the dogs out.
Yeah.
And tidy up for the night. But I really do want to thank everybody for joining. This was really fun. I'm looking forward to the next one. Yeah. And for those watching,
you, Mike, for having us, for putting it together.
Thank you for being the venue for this.
Yeah.
This very cool. Yeah,
really
absolutely. I'm thrilled to do this.
Long, you know, he's gone.
By the way, Mike, you should have done like that CBS thing. Tonight's wax stream will not be seen tonight because classical.
He's got to go walk the dog.
Sorry, Rob. Hey,
shut up.
All right. Okay. See you, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you.